It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it is exactly 6 o'clock on Wednesday the 13th of December. You're tuned in to Breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Good morning to you. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister lives on to fight another day as the Tory rebellion over the Rwanda plan is squashed. But is the PM out of the woods yet? Olivia Utley's in Westminster with the latest.
Rishi Sunak's been given one more chance, but with backbenchers on both sides of his party still breathing down his neck, the problems are far from over for our beleaguered Prime Minister.
A whirlwind 24 hours for our Climate Minister, that is he. His name is Graham Stewart. So he's in Dubai at COP28, but he had to come back to the House of Commons last night to support the Prime Minister over Rwanda. So what does that do for the climate?
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been dubbed among the biggest losers of 2023 as their Archewell Foundation faces a nearly £9 million funding drop. Showbiz and royal reporter Kinsey Schofield will be joining us shortly.
Paul Coit, back today with your sport. Good morning, mister.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Not good.
Oh, well, welcome to
United out of Europe.
Yes, not only out of the Champions League, but they're out of Europe as well. So, and with barely a whimper, to be honest with you. Newcastle have to win in the Champions League tonight. Also, I've got more on that awful referee attack in Turkey as well, which I've never seen anything like in my life.
Yeah, out of order, bang out of order,
Yeah.
literally.
Terrible. Well, Annie Shuttleworth will also have your forecast for you this morning.
Good morning. After the unsettled day yesterday, there'll be more dry and fine weather around today, but not for everyone. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
Get involved in the discussions as usual, gbviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet at gbnews.
So to our top story this morning, and it is relief for the Prime Minister this morning as he's seen off the Tory rebellion to get his Rwanda bill through the House of Commons last night.
Order. Order. The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Unlocked.
Well, the emergency legislation went through with a majority of 44 after Conservative hardliners backed away from their threats to vote it down. No Conservative MP actually voted against the bill. Instead, 29 of them abstained.
But the Prime Minister can't relax just yet. The Tory rebels have warned they would try to defeat the bill at the next reading unless it's hardened in the coming weeks.
However, as the former Immigration Minister Damien Green said, any attempts to harden the Rwanda bill could result in more moderate Conservatives backing away.
If the amendments actually either break our international commitments or mean that our commitment to the rule of law is questioned, then in the One Nation group we've said, we've told the government very openly and said publicly that we would vote against them.
So the Prime Minister might have avoided a Tory mutiny this time, but how long will it last? Let's get the views and all of this from our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. It was high drama right down to the wire, but it seems that the whips embracing the Prime Minister last night managed to get the party to toe the line at least a little bit.
Well, absolutely. After all of that excitement yesterday in Westminster, the vote, when it finally came, felt like a bit of a damp squib. But as you say, the problems are far from over for Rishi Sunak. Although the bill passed the second reading yesterday with a bigger than expected majority, those right-wing rebels are already saying that they will be prepared to vote down the bill at the third reading unless it's amended to be significantly toughened up. Now, there are 29 of them, 29 abstained. It would take precisely 29 Conservative MPs voting the bill down for Rishi Sunak to lose it altogether. So he has to listen to what his right-wing backbenchers say. But meanwhile, there's that group of 106 One Nation Tories, those on the left of the party, led by Damien Green, the former Deputy Prime Minister, who are saying that they will only vote for the bill if it remains in its unamended state. And with Labour as well, even if you just had a handful of them, another 29 of them, voting the bill down, then Rishi Sunak again would lose it altogether. What I was hearing quite a lot from Conservative MPs yesterday in Parliament was frustration that it's been allowed to get this big. Rwanda, they think, was supposed to be a relatively minor part of the Conservatives' immigration policy, but it has become this flagship dream of Rishi Sunak because he's been talking about it so much ever since he became Prime Minister. Those Tory MPs feel that other parts of the Conservatives' illegal immigration plan are beginning to bear fruit. The deal that the Prime Minister struck with the Albanian Prime Minister earlier in this year have seen Albanian migrants crossing the Channel in dinghies reduced by 70%. That extra money that's been given to the Channel has been improving French policing on the shores of Calais. So there are movements forward, but all of the airtime, all of the headlines in Westminster at the moment are obviously just taken up with the Rwanda plan. And there are plenty of Conservative MPs, even those who voted for it last night, who are supportive of the Prime Minister, even those who came out on TV yesterday and supported it, who worry that it's just not the silver bullet that Rishi Sunak seems to be selling it as to the public.
What way was it sold to various wings of the party, though? We look at that breakfast yesterday, we look at the abstentions that took place in the House last night. Promises must have been made from the Prime Minister that come committee stage, don't worry, guys, we'll sort it out there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's what one's got to assume. Even Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, who stood down because he disliked the bill so much, who wrote that pretty withering resignation letter to Rishi Sunak about how the bill could never work. Even he didn't vote against it. He only abstained. And same with Suella Braverman. So you have to assume that behind the scenes, Rishi Sunak was agreeing to them that he would toughen it up in some respect. Now, we don't know precisely what that would involve, but essentially the problem that the right-wing rebels have with the bill is that although it declares the Rwanda a safe country in general, it leaves a little bit of wiggle room for individual migrants to go to the Supreme Court and say that in their own personal circumstances, deportation to Rwanda would be unsafe. Now, the government has maintained over and over again that those circumstances are very narrow, that it would only be, for example, women in the later stages of pregnancy who couldn't fly, or those with illnesses that couldn't be treated in Rwanda. But as yet, that isn't actually written into the legislation. So perhaps Rishi Sunak has promised that those specific circumstances would be explicitly laid out in that legislation. Or perhaps he said, and there was a hint of this yesterday, I was watching the debate in the Commons, James cleverly reassured Bill Cash that Parliament would be supreme over any court decisions. So perhaps that's the way that Rishi Sunak has managed to get his backbenchers on side. We will find out in the new year. But of course, the problem is that the further he goes to toughening this up, the more of those right-wing backbenchers he gets on his side, the more likely he is to lose some of those One Nationers.
It is a difficult position to be in. Thanks very much, Olivia. We're going to get the thoughts now of our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, who joins us this morning. Nigel, interesting what Olivia was saying there about how the number of Conservative Conservative MPs saying they can't understand why Rwanda has got so big. But I put it to you that it is a deliberate strategy by the Prime Minister, because although it may not succeed, it certainly appeals to a particular wing of the party to be looking as though they're doing something about these crossings of the Channel, and distracts from the fact that actually they have huge net migration, which they aren't actually doing anything about.
Yeah, that's about right, Isabel. That it's become a sort of totemic issue for the Conservative Party, and they're in a lot of trouble with it. That, as often with sort of moments of high drama in the House of Commons, it did all fall a bit flat last night. I mean, during the day, it was great fun watching different groups of Tory MPs scurrying off to meetings, plotting away and working out how they could try and defeat this bill. When it came to it, they didn't. No one voted against it, so all we had was some abstentions. But at the moment, it's difficult to see quite where the Prime Minister goes with it, because even if he gets it through the Commons, which you always can by simply turning it into a vote of confidence and threatening a general election, it would go to the House of Lords, who could delay it for next year. So the chances of flights actually taking off are still quite low.
What about, in all of this, the position for Labour? And we're doing sort of morning round with the shadow cabinet a little bit later on. I think for the first time now, Sir Keir Starmer has admitted that if this does become law, they will actually repeal it and they won't continue with it as a piece of legislation. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's right. I mean, the Labour's plan is to use the money spent on Rwanda to form a special police unit to try and knock out the smuggling gangs who are bringing migrants across the Channel. So it may well be it'll never come to that. If the Lords can delay it, and they can do so for up to a year, we'll be beyond the election date anyway, and so it may never come to pass. But if it did, yes, what Keir Starmer has said is he would scrap it and go a different route.
What about the future of Rishi Sunak? I mean, he'll be happy this morning, but he'll be anxious, won't he, about what happens in the new year, not only for his premiership, but for this policy, for this piece of legislation?
Yes, and as I say, we could actually see a snap election, that it may turn out that come the new year, when it goes through all its various common stages, he still can't get it through at the final vote. Now, if that's the case, what he can then do is say to his MPs, right, if you don't vote for this bill, I will turn it into a vote of confidence. That means that if he loses that, it's a snap general election. But more importantly for the MPs, what it means is if they vote against him in a vote of confidence, they lose the whip and then can't stand in that general election. So a lot of MPs would stand to lose their jobs.
OK. Talking jobs, Nigel, there's a guy called Graham Stewart, and Graham Stewart is our climate minister, and Graham Stewart was in Dubai for the COP28 summit meeting. But because of that vote last night, he was recalled to cast his vote on behalf of the government in the House last night and then fly back in an environmentally unfriendly way to Dubai again. My question to you is, was his vote needed so much? I mean, bear in mind there was a majority of 40-something for the government, that this was necessary to do, because the look is not good.
No, it's not. I mean, he managed to build up a huge carbon footprint going backwards and forwards. And I'm sure he's pretty angry this morning that he had to go and do it. No, it wasn't necessary. But what the government didn't know at the time was whether it might be. It could have been a tight vote. Marc Francois, the leader of the European Research Group, had basically been playing chicken all day with the government. He'd been saying, right, if you don't pull this bill, we might vote it down. So Tory whips couldn't be certain that Graham Stewart's vote wouldn't be necessary. Other MPs who are on a fact-finding trip in the Caribbean also had to fly back. They're not very happy either.
No. And someone else who will not be very happy as we say goodbye to you, Nigel, Donncha McCarthy, who's a climate columnist for The Independent. And Donncha, what do you make? You've heard Nigel talking about the various ministers in the West Indies and And Graham Stewart, the irony, him being a climate minister, recalled from Dubai. One would have thought in this day and age, surely they could make exemptions or, vote via video or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, good morning, Isabel and Eamonn. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. In this 21st century, we can vote electronically. We all do it at home. We do it even for a celebrity. Get me out of here. I think the real hypocrisy that is actually the government's position on flying. Period. Their response to this issue yesterday was the government doesn't care about flying. Well, we absolutely must care about flying because the carbon emissions are staggering. The 3 private jets that the government prime minister and the 2 ministers took to the opening of COP, they would take a working class family 140 years of turning off all their electricity to make up the pollution from it. And the government refuses to tax the rich who fly on private jets and long-haul flights, holidays every year. They refuse to put VAT, they refuse to put fuel duty. Working people pay fuel duty on buses and VAT on bus fuel. We must actually tax the rich, destruction of our planet.
I mean, I presume that Graham Stewart, our climate minister, wasn't put on a private jet to return back for this vote. There would have been a commercial flight that was flying anyway. Not that I'm trying to justify it in any way, but I'm just trying to put the alternative argument. 7,000 miles, obviously, the journey in total. But was he adding to the carbon that was already being spent?
Well, I mean, you're right. We don't. If he went, I'm not sure whether there's a commercial flight in the middle of the night to Dubai, so we don't know which way he went. But we do know that the Prime Minister went by private jet. And I just looked up the price for a private jet. If I wanted to fly to Dubai for the COP, which of course I wouldn't do in a million years, it's £180,000. £180,000 to fly a private jet. And I think when we're talking about hypocrisy, our Prime Minister is living a billionaire lifestyle at our expense. He flies in a private jet or helicopter once every 8 days. Once every 8 days, he's flying by private jet around the UK at the taxpayer expense. And what we really need to remember is, I don't know if you understand, Isabel and Eamonn, but you guys are committed to fairness. 1%, the richest 1% emit 66% of the carbon emissions that 66% of humanity emit. So the poorest of humanity emit the same amount of carbon as the rich billionaire class like Sunak and others like him. We've got to tackle this issue.
OK, but I suppose, Donica, the government would say on this particular issue, this was on a knife edge, a flagship piece of legislation, all centring around human rights, presumably things that you also can appreciate are incredibly grave. We talked earlier about why can't we, in 2023, do more voting by proxy. I know that since 2020, it's been permitted for MPs who are off on maternity leave, for example, to vote in absentia from home electronically. Why isn't that then rolled out in the modern world for these kinds of votes, do you think?
Well, in many ways, Westminster, like its building, is stuck in the 19th century. Many other countries in the world have electronic voting. And also, but we do have paired voting. So maybe some of the responsibility for this also goes on to Keir Starmer. Maybe he refused to allow Graham Stewart to be paired with a Labour frontbencher who would be voting against the bill. So there's dual responsibility here, I feel, by both the Labour Party and the Tory government in refusing to allow pairing. Pairing has been done for years, where if a minister cannot make a vote for some legitimate reason, the opposition will pair them with an opposition member who can't attend either.
Well, another bad look for COP28 in general. Donegal McCarthy, thank you very much indeed for your take on things. Your views at home, listening and watching, very welcome. gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet at gbnews with the time. Coming up to 18 minutes past 6.
You're tuned into Breakfast with Isabel and Eamonn. Here's a reminder of our top stories this morning. The Prime Minister is living on to fight another day as that Tory rebellion over Rwanda plans was quashed. But we're asking this morning, is the PM out of the woods yet?
Downing Street has said migrants living on the Bibby Stockholm barge have been assessed for emotional trauma. It follows the death of an asylum seeker on board who's understood to have taken his own life. The first asylum seekers were brought back to the vessel in October.
The serial baby killer Lucy Letby has been stripped of her nursing credentials after a panel ordered her to be struck off from the register. Letby told the Nursing and Midwifery Council that she didn't object to losing her credentials, but she said, "I maintain my innocence."
The United Nations General Assembly has voted in favour of a non-binding resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The United States, Austria and Israel were amongst 10 members to vote against it. The United Kingdom abstained. It comes as the American President Joe Biden says Israel is starting to lose global support over what he termed indiscriminate bombing.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been dubbed among the biggest losers of 2023 by The Hollywood Reporter. It comes as the couple's foundation Archewell have released their records for the year, revealing a significant £8.7 million drop in revenue in the space of 12 months.
If you're heading out today, Annie Shuttleworth now with your weather update.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's gotten us off to more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
Thank you, Annie. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway.
Yes, and actually I have to say, you guys have been really into this, so I'm so pleased to see you getting involved, because you can only win if you get involved. And what is up for grabs, Eamonn?
10 grand, £10,000 in cash.
And not just that, what else?
Brand new tech and shopping vouchers.
So if you would like to be the winner of our very first Great British Giveaway, here are all the details of how you can make those prizes yours.
This week, we're launching the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to grab some amazing prizes and start your new year the right way. You could win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Imagine having all of that extra cash in your bank account. We'll also bring you bang up to date with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we'll give you £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Meghan and Harry, we're going to be looking at the Duke and Duchess of Sussex as the little charity they run really is little, because it's £9 million in debt. Kinsey Schofield after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's bad news for Harry and Meghan. Their charity, Archewell, named after their 4-year-old son, has this year seen donations dropping by nearly £9 million.
Archewell's tax returns show it is in the red, but the bad news didn't stop there. The couple have realised a video, a glitz video. They released this yesterday to celebrate Archewell's successes. Have a look. OK, so they wrap a lot of presents or whatever. Do they wrap £10 million worth of presents and give it all away? Why are they in the red? What does this charity do? Let's go to royal reporter Kinsey Schofield on this one in the US of A. So, well, what do you make of this and why such a big deficit?
Eamonn and Isabel, I would just like to note that this is the second time I've seen you this week, which means I've worked one more day than Harry and Meghan typically do for Archewell, because in these tax documents, we see that they work like 1 day a week for this charity. No wonder people are hesitating to donate to their charity when their executive directors seem to be not as committed as certainly the Prince and Princess of Wales are to their charity endeavors. But yeah, this is interesting to me, Eamonn and Isabel, because Harry and Meghan they've had somebody talk to TMZ, which is the big celebrity news site here in the States, because they want to clear the air here. They think that this story is garbage. They say that they are not in the red because they're not a corporation. And this is just the UK media making a big deal out of nothing. But interesting to me that a source close to Archewell can talk to TMZ about Archewell in the red. But I'm sorry to do this, sorry to bring it up again, but no word on Endgame.
Yeah, interesting that, isn't it? The first time we've heard from them at all, and they haven't done anything to say we had nothing to do with Endgame, but they did come out and defend their charity. Very astute observation, Kinsey. It's funny, the Sun newspaper really gunning for the pair this morning. They've got the headline, Hollywood's biggest losers, and they actually list the catalogue of, disasters that they've had, which when you see it written in order, it is shocking. They had the podcast dropped. They had ridicule on South Park. They had a back row seat for the coronation. They had the bust up over the book Spare. Then they were kicked out of Frogmore. They've had the bust up over the book Endgame. They've had the Netflix documentary Outrage, and they've They've been pictured at concerts looking miserable. It's been a bad year.
It has been a bad year, and I don't, I feel like we would have a completely different opinion of them if they spent the same amount of time at concerts, publicly. To me, it's like, you're not Santa Claus. You can't work one day a year, Invictus, and then want us all to admire your charitable contributions. If we saw them out and about more, under the radar, even just the way that Kate will randomly drop off things to baby banks that we don't know about. They need to think more about other people, and they really need to focus more on people hurting in the States, because that's where they live now. And I think that maybe perhaps that could turn people's opinions around about them, but also they've got to let go of their animosity towards the British royal family, because I'm an American wearing my Union Jack over here. We absolutely adore the British royal family.
Well, what does Archewell do?
That's a great question, Eamonn. I'd love to know the answer to that. I think when we think of what Harry and Meghan contribute, there's the Invictus Games, which is great, although I would say from the ground up, that was built by not only Harry, but the royal family and everybody that helped him build that within the palace, that palace staff that helped him build that from the ground up. Archewell, what we have tangibly seen them do is insert themselves, attach themselves to other charities that are contributing. There are no real original concepts from Archewell. They just go to other charities that are doing things and say, hey, can we tack on to this? And it'll be Harry and Meghan are helping out with this. And that's really what we've seen them do over the last year.
It paid more than $500,000 to its 5 members of staff, apparently, as well. So that's interesting.
Are they included in that?
Yeah.
5 members of staff?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
They pay themselves?
No, they're not. They do not.
Sorry.
They do not.
Sorry, they don't pay themselves. I thought you meant didn't realise they meant the couple. Yes, they don't pay themselves. Just the 5 staff. So there we go.
There we go.
I suppose it's always a difficult area if I'm being fair, as I like to be, even the King, he's been mired in a bit of controversy when there were suitcases of cash being delivered, weren't there, to the then Prince's Trust. So the royals can get themselves into difficulty, although they obviously famously want to do good work. There's always, the newspapers are always looking for a story.
Yeah, but the feeling here, Kinsey, is they're not so much doing good work as doing good work for themselves, rehabilitating their image, making this all about their image as well. And they're not as royal as Isabel would have them be. They're not true royals.
No, they're not working royals, but they are HRHs, yeah.
No. So do we care? Do we care what Archewell does, really? That's the question.
I think all eyes are on what Harry and Meghan do to survive. And this is a sign that they are failing. And so people are interested in this storyline, because if they can't succeed at the charity circuit, if they can't succeed in Hollywood, and you just mentioned they're considered one of the biggest losers in Hollywood from The Hollywood Reporter, then what can they do to survive? Because the royal family is done with them. I think that they're in desperate times now. What are the next steps?
I've got a suggestion.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. That's the next step.
I was going to say, I've got a suggestion. Just stop whinging. Do something positive, and people might have a more positive view of them. But their strategy has just been so negative. All right, Kinsey, we have to say goodbye. Thank you so much. You always light up our mornings. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Right, the time's 6:32. We're going to take a little reminder now of our top stories this morning, and we're reflecting on the Prime Minister living on to fight another day as the Tory rebellion over the Rwanda plan is quashed. So we're asking this morning, is the Prime Minister out of the woods?
A whirlwind 24 hours for Climate Minister Graham Stewart, flying back from COP28 to support the Prime Minister over Rwanda, only to travel immediately back to Dubai again.
The United Nations General Assembly's voted in favour of a non-binding resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The United States, Austria and Israel were among 10 members to vote against it, and the United Kingdom abstained once again.
I'm reading the reader's letters page in the Eye, and it talks about I'm a Celebrity and said, it is a vehicle for the failed and faltering to try and re-establish some sort of career. It was hard to see how much lower it could go when Matt Hancock was on it last year. Perfect for Meghan and Harry. Perfect. That's where they should be next year. And then it could help out the charity, the money that they
like Hancock did. About 10 grand went to dyslexia, didn't it?
I think we could do better
I thought,
than
as you were saying, you were going through the letters section, that you were using that as your intro to Paul Coy, because, of course, in the past, we've seen letters being written in about our #1 sports presenter, Mr. Paul Coy.
Dear sir, I must complain in the strongest possible terms.
Yes, yes.
He looked funny today. That's all those. What were those ones? What, those insulting ones?
No, the ones
the nice
that
one.
said you should replace Gary Lineker.
Oh, yeah. Still waiting for the call. Still hasn't happened yet. Still hanging in there. Right, Eamonn, I'm a bit worried about Manchester United.
Well, I didn't expect anything else, but, yeah, you've got to be a bit worried now. Bottom of their Champions League table group and out of Europe completely.
It is, because if they got third place, then they would have been in the Europa League. It's the worst Champions League qualification they've ever had. 4 points. I mean, to be behind Copenhagen, I mean, for crying out loud, no offence to Copenhagen, but really. There's Erik ten Hag. I just wonder how much longer he's got for his time at Manchester United.
Well,
I think there's going to be a big broom that's going to come through.
If I were him, I'd probably resign now before the Liverpool match at the weekend and save himself further humiliation, really.
But there's either save yourself humiliation or you say goodbye to a big payoff. And nobody's going to do that, are they?
That's a very good point.
That's why you don't get managers resign anymore, because if they walk away, they don't get a payoff.
Yeah.
If he then waits and thinks, OK, well, I'll wait for the inevitable, then he's going to be goodness knows how many
But that works
million.
two ways as well, because then the club would rather he went of his own accord, so they don't have to do the payoff. So they're both in this kind of chicken situation.
It's true, but the thing is, clubs do it because it's so important for them to try and sort it out. It is factored in. And then we're still waiting on this Sir Jim Radcliffe Ineos takeover, which last week we hear, it's definitely going to be this week. He's going to come in and buy his 25%. So I think once that happens, if it happens, because it seems to be taking forever, that's when we're going to see the change.
There's all sorts of rumours that there is renewed interest from the Qatari bid.
Oh, they're back on the scene again.
Well, there's all sorts of talk that that's what's delaying the Radcliffe announcement.
It's just going on forever. We're talking years now.
Yeah.
But anyway, as you mentioned, it's going to be tricky because Liverpool at Anfield, that's the last game that Manchester United won. But we've seen this before, where it's been terrible by Man United and think, it's a disaster. Then they put effort in, because that's what was missing yesterday, was effort. And the only ones that did have it was Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw, and they're now going to be out for that game.
Yeah, but they're missing a lot of players, including Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw for the Liverpool game. They picked up injuries yesterday, Maguire and Shaw. Newcastle in action tonight, Milan in the Champions League.
So that's a must-win. So AC Milan tonight. This is the way. See, we're looking at permutations. We Arsenal qualified yesterday without any problem at all, but we're looking at other games. So Newcastle have to beat AC Milan. And Newcastle, obviously, they lost to Spurs. They lost 3-0 at Everton. They need to do well. So they need to beat AC Milan and Borussia Dortmund. If they don't lose to Paris Saint-Germain in Germany, then they'll be OK. But it all happens in the other one as well.
This Turkish referee who was punched is talking about now he may well retire from the game.
Yeah, well, Halil Umut Meyler, I know you talked about it yesterday. Faruk Koka is the president of the Turkish Super League team. Ankara Gucu, and the story is, I think everybody around the world has seen this. It's just the most unbelievable scene. I mean, look at this guy.
He should be put in jail for that.
He should absolutely be put in jail. So, he's actually spoken after this, and see what you make of this. This is the guy that put the punch in, and he's the chairman, and he said, the incident developed due to the wrong decisions and the provocative behaviour of the referee. Even if that was the case, no excuse. My aim was to react verbally to the referee and get this, and to just spit in his face. I was only going to...
That was all.
That was all. I was only going to spit in his face
instead of punching him.
That was all right.
And ended up punching him
and
instead.
he said, at this time, I slapped the referee in the face when it looked like a blooming punch to me.
Well, you see the black eye that he gave the ref.
The slap I gave...
And then the kicks that followed from his hoods that surround him there. They're in there, and there's a lot of kicking going on.
I've never seen seen anything like it.
Well,
said it wouldn't cause a fracture. After my slap, the referee threw himself on the ground. They immediately removed me from the scene because I have a heart condition. That was the reason, because everybody was... Anyway, it's a disgrace. There he is in hospital. That's the Turkish president is actually on the phone there, speaking to him.
Yes,
that's the Interior Minister there that's with the referee.
Someone should go to jail for that, in my opinion. That's grievous bodily harm.
It's horrendous. And the ramifications, we know what referees are going through here. So it's just one of the worst things.
Let's finish with the cheeky Nando's.
Yeah, Jack Grealish, private Christmas party. He's taken over the Nando's in Shirley in the West Midlands. That's where he's had his Christmas do. And
can you think of worse places?
I can think of worse places. You ever went off for one of those cards? Because they have you heard about those? I think they had black Nando's cards.
Yeah.
If you had one of those, you could go into Nando's anywhere. Free Nando's.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate thing.
Well, I'm sure they have 3 more that they could dish out.
Do you think so?
I think so.
That'd be only fair, really. I'm a big Jack Grealish fan, so...
Yeah, and Nando's. And
Nando's, so... I
had a Hard Rock Cafe card in the day.
Did you? Well, you go anywhere and get a free one?
Got me past the queue. That was back in the 90s, and I used it a few years ago, and I said, does this get me anything? And they said, I don't know what this is. And I said, well... They said, oh... I haven't seen one of those for about 20, 30 years. No, it doesn't get you anything. That's it. So there you go.
Get you back again, 7:20.
I'll bring my card in. I'll bring my card.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right, stay with us. Coming up, we're going to be asking if the Prime Minister will have another fight on his hands. That with all the rest of the day's news in the Headline Makers. Stay with us for it.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, we're going to take a look at your front pages, how they're shaping up on this Wednesday morning. The Times leading with Rishi Sunak's survival of the Rwanda vote. Apparently, though, they say it is not over yet.
Here's the Telegraph. Sunak facing down Rwanda rebels, winning the first parliamentary battle over the emergency legislation. The Express.
They're leading with the same. They call it a victory for the Prime Minister and state mutiny over the Rwanda plan has faded away, ... for now.
The Mail says the Prime Minister has seen off the Tory Rwanda rebels again for now. And joining us to go through that story and lots more is the medical writer Dr. Renee
Hunderkamp.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Hunderkamp and former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker, and getting your views both on the Sunak situation after last night. So the real detail of this won't come out until we get to the committee stage, Norman.
Well, look, all he's done is buy time. That's it. And it's not really a victory. It's a delayed
catastrophe from his point of view. There are two conflicting views in the Tory party which are irreconcilable. You've got the people on the right who never want to compromise on anything, actually, and who are determined to try and force changes to the bill to effectively cut out the European Convention on Human Rights. And you've got the majority, actually, the kind of One Nation group on the left of the Tory party, the Damien Greens of this world, who say not an inch further. And I think the One Nation lot, who generally behave themselves, have had enough and are saying this is a red line for us. Well, there isn't an answer out of that, I'm afraid. And if they try and push amendments in the committee stage, if the right push amendments and they're successful, the left of the party will vote against it. And if the amendments aren't successful, the right will vote against it at third reading. So he's not going to hold the party together. All he's done is delay this.
Yeah, and that begs the question, Renee, whether or not it's the leader's fault or indeed if it is now the party that is unleadable because it is so divided.
So I think I would disagree with Norman. I don't think I would describe the right as the right. I would describe those as the Tories in the Tory party. And
so Keir Starmer described them as Trump's tribe, not Churchill's.
Well, he would, wouldn't he? And I think I would describe the rest of them as the Liberal Democrats within the Tory party, and I think they need to split. I don't think it is reconcilable. I do agree with you on that basis. But they need to split because they're not representing anybody at the moment with this middle ground that they're trying to hawk out.
Yeah, what would you do, though, if you were Rishi Sunak? Genuine question.
He's inherited a complete nightmare after Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. He's inherited an ungovernable party, and he's tried to hold it together. But, I mean, it's almost impossible. And I think the other thing is that the Conservatives have concluded in their own hearts they're going to lose the election. And what
so it's just a case of holding on to power, kicking this can down the road, delaying everything as long as possible.
Well, I mean, that's what he's trying to do, and hoping something will turn up in the famous...
But is that what would you do?
Well, I mean, in his situation, I think I'd plant my flag and rally people around it as best you can, and lose some off the edge. But the point is that the election, I think they're going to lose. They think they're going to lose. And what they're now doing is battling for the soul of the Conservative Party after the election. That's what's happening.
What would you do, Renee, if you were Rishi Sunak in this situation? Because, as we've heard, the One Nation say, if you toughen this up any further, we're going to put our foot down. He can't win.
He can't win. This is an unwinnable situation. And actually, the Tories that buckled last night and voted for it should be ashamed of themselves because they're not representing their gut feeling. They're not representing their constituents. People are very, very worried about the migration situation in this country. So I think, actually, they should just call in an election and go for it. You know, we'll get Labour, but we're going to get it anyway. So let's do it, get the pain and work our way through it.
Interesting. Now, talking about pain, I want to talk about hospitals here. Renee, the same-sex hospitals. So there's a big private hospital group and insurer called HCA, and they're believed to be one of the first major healthcare providers to offer a guarantee that you can go to a hospital of your choosing, a same-sex hospital.
So it's not a same-sex hospital, it's a same-sex practitioner. So they're saying that you should be able to choose in hospital that you are only treated by somebody who is of your sex, if that's what you want. Now, there are lots of people who would choose this. There are women who obviously are worried about their sexual health and their penis.
But is that not easily achievable? I mean, if you find that you're not getting what you want, you simply ask for the person you want, no?
Well, you just ask for somebody who is of the same sex of you. And there are lots of religious people who would only want to be treated and do on a daily basis within the NHS. Now, this is something that the Tories promised over a year ago, that women would be on same-sex wards and only be treated by people who are of the same sex. And it was triggered by a woman in the private sector who had her operation cancelled because she didn't want a trans man who identified as a woman treating her. And frankly... I think it's outrageous that we're even having this conversation. As a woman, why would you want to be treated by somebody who was presenting as a woman but actually was a man?
Personally, I've never really cared about the gender of somebody. I think if you have a problem with it, it'd be much easier to have a chaperone than to try and find someone of the same qualification. You want the best person to see, regardless of whether they're a male or a female. If you're worried about anything, it's very easy to get a low-qualified chaperone.
But we're mainly talking about nurses here. There are plenty of nurses on wards, especially in private hospitals. Not many of them, obviously, are trans-identifying men. So, you know, it would be very easy to say, no, actually, I only want a woman treating me. I think it should be a woman's choice. And again, It's this desire to try and erode women's rights and the word woman. And yes, I think it's great that women are pushing back, and I think it's great that the private hospital is actually responding.
Here's an interesting one, Norman. Right, so the supermarkets you may give up. Don't bother going to a supermarket in the next 2 weeks because they're full. They're completely full now because apparently it's going to be the end of the world. When Christmas comes, there's going to be nothing left and everybody's in doing. Have you noticed yet? Have you seen it yet?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's my favourite outing at the moment. Every time it's, I get a poinsettia. I'll just pop in and pick up some mince pies.
But the queues don't put you off.
Well, no, because I do it with the gun. You know, when you go around and you... That sounds wrong,
that's
but
what
you know
the
what I mean?
story is.
That's what this
Oh, is
woman
it?
did.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yeah,
Go
right.
on.
Well, the story, Norman, tell us more. So this woman, she fills up her basket. It's £101.06.
Yeah.
What happens next?
She's been going around with Isabel's gun, and she's been stopped, and they wanted to check her shopping to make sure that, well, I suppose they want to make sure she's not taking something which she hasn't paid for.
They do spot checks.
They do spot checks. It's a spot check, effectively. But, you know, the problem is here that supermarkets, I think, have got to the position where they want to maximise their profit, and that means getting rid of staff, and they're getting customers to do the work that staff should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, scanning stuff themselves. You know, it won't be very long before they're unloading the lorries, will it?
This is one intervention that I actually think is progress, because it just makes it quicker. If you go in and you fill up your trolley, then you go to the queue and someone scans it, and then you have to pack your bags at the end. That's a bore. Whereas if you have your bags in the trolley, you go around, you put the stuff in your bag as you go.
And you can steal whatever you want.
And yes.
Well, no, because you've got the threat of a spot check.
Well, I mean, this woman's objecting to the spot check and saying how dare they spot check me.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And also, she's been filming what was happening, which I think she's probably entitled to in a way, and the supermarket had to stop her filming. They brought this on themselves, in my view, because they are encouraging theft, and there's an acceptance that if you have self-checkout, the theft level will go up.
Yeah,
and they balanced that against the savings they get from not employing people.
All the responsibility goes on to the customer. The responsibility for saving money on staff, the responsibility for being 101% honest. It's like when I go to an airport, I absolutely refuse to check in myself and check in my baggage and do everything that a member of staff should be doing. That really puts me off.
There we are. Well, you and I are in agreement on that, I think.
Are we in agreement with that?
I think you and I are in agreement.
But, Isabel, you...
What, checking in?
You fancy slaving around
No,
for
I don't like extra work at all, and I don't like putting people out of work at all either. But where there is progress, I'm in favour of those sorts of life hacks.
I'm with Isabel. I don't shop the way you do. I do the old-fashioned, boring way, but I do a self-checkout. But I agree with you. If people want to do this and it saves time, then why not? However, I also think you accept that you might be spot-checked and don't go crazy when you are.
It's also a top tip if you have children, you take them to the supermarket. They love the gun. It keeps them busy. It's not actually called a gun. I'm not suggesting it's called the scan as you shop feature. But it's a great way to keep the kids entertained as you go up and down the aisles. Zara boycott, Renee. What's this story? Zara had been in a bit of hot water. It's been all over my Instagram, this story.
They have. So I only saw this morning. I've had a look at the ads. They look very arty. There are some mannequins that are wrapped in white paper. There are some mannequins that are being carried in an art studio that is clearly being set up without arms, which mannequins, until they're dressed, rarely have arms. And apparently people have gone crazy because they think it actually is insulting to Palestine because they look like bodies. I think people need to just get real.
Right, so this is people's interpretation. This is not what the store's saying.
Absolutely. People are just being really, really sensitive about this, and I'm afraid, I think that this is, you know, a storm in a teacup. It's ridiculous.
What do you think, Norman? Because I don't know that we're showing the most provocative images. I do think some of them that I've seen, certainly anywhere on social media, have definitely made me wince.
Well, I mean, I don't like the art. It's art. I don't like it. I wouldn't particularly be encouraged to buy their products as a consequence, but I don't see any link with Palestine particularly. This could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. And it has actually got Zara all over the papers, so it's probably achieved what they wanted.
What are we achieving, Norman and Rennie, at COP28 and this climate minister that we have being called back to the vote in the House last night and then being flown back out to Dubai again, which was not a good look overall. So, Rennie, what do you think they can achieve? Because everything requires agreement from all participating countries.
Look, the fact that we're on COP28, soon to be 29, says that we achieve almost nothing from this. The fact that the minister came back and increased his carbon footprint even more than the 98,000 people that went into COP non-stop, many of them on private jets. It's hypocrisy at its worst. It's a complete waste of time. And actually, these people going to COP by plane should be ashamed of themselves. Yeah. All we've achieved is that we want a reduction now. It's nothing binding in CO2. It's a big hoax, I think, that these people fly out there and are actually saving the world. They're doing damage.
Well, as you say, we've reached 28 COPs. Norman, I wonder, I mean, I don't know what they've ever achieved in any of the 27 previous ones, but...
well, they've achieved a bit, I mean, but it's much too slow. I mean, the projections for the heating of the world is now been reduced from, I think, 3.7 to 2.7 or something, so as a consequence of previous agreements. I totally agree, actually, about the private jets issue, and I'll just make the point that from this country, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, and the King all went out on 3 separate private jets, which is just indefensible, quite frankly. But, I mean, where we are now is that unanimity is required. You've got Gulf states who are oil producers who are not going to agree to anything which, frankly, takes away their main source of income. And we've got these kind of compromise words which are a bit mealy-mouthed, and whether it actually leads to fossil fuels being phased out or not, I don't know. But, I mean, we do actually have to phase out fossil fuels. The sooner we recognise that, the better.
And just tell me, why can't ministers overseas vote via proxy, like people on maternity leave? They've been doing that for 3 years now. Why on earth couldn't the climate minister have just registered an electronic vote last
Well, I mean, it's not just a minister. There was also, for example, a delegation, the International Development Committee was called back from abroad as well to vote. This is normal procedure. I mean, it's not a good look
But why can't they just modernise that system?
Well, I suppose the old-fashioned argument is that we ought to be in the Commons to hear the debates, and that's been slightly compromised or changed because of the maternity issue. But by and large, that's been the rule, and people shouldn't be allowed to vote remotely, because then you'll end up with people not sitting in the chamber and voting on things they never heard the debate on. That's the theory.
OK. What about this tree chop story? This sort of ties in with the story we were talking about with Plymouth yesterday, and it looks like an absolute desecration.
Oh, it's terrible.
In Torquay, is it?
It's Torquay and the home of Fulton
Plymouth,
Towers,
wasn't it?
of course,
No.
for Torquay. And it's not the first place it's happened. Other places have had those trees cut down. You would think they would learn from that. But the council, which is cutting down all these lovely trees, says it's a regeneration scheme. And it also says that the work was carried out by its contractors to upgrade the site. So there you are, it's all right, isn't it?
40 beautiful... Are they yucca trees or...?
They're called cabbage trees.
Cabbage trees, they look beautiful.
Yeah.
Does this not demonstrate what's wrong with local councils and why they're all going bankrupt? That instead of focusing on our potholes and our bin empty and the things that people really need, they're spending money to destroy these trees and then plant new ones.
Yes, mad. Absolutely mad. No sense there at all.
OK, guys, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Dr Renee and Norman will be back in about 40 minutes' time. We look forward to that. Still to come, we will be returning to Westminster for all the latest on the Rwanda vote last night. But first,
here's your weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's gotten us off to a more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel
to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. It's Wednesday the 13th of December and you are very welcome. This is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
However you're watching, however you're listening, you're very welcome. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister has survived the biggest threat to his leadership yet and lives to fight another day as the Rwanda bill passes the Commons. But is he out of the woods just yet? Olivia Utley will tell you.
Yes, Rishi Sunak is breathing a sigh of relief this morning after the Rwanda bill passed its second reading with a bigger than expected majority. But with backbenchers still breathing down his neck on both sides of the party, the problems are far from over for our beleaguered Prime Minister.
Ukrainian President Zelensky's in Washington, D.C. this week, meeting with President Biden, asking for more funding for Ukraine. But with a hold-up in the US Congress, is the West's support for Ukraine waning? We're going to be speaking to Major General Mike Shearer very shortly.
Harry and Meghan have been dubbed 2023's biggest losers after their Archewell Foundation suffered nearly £10 million in losses. But the bad news didn't stop there. The couple have dropped a slick promotion for Archewell just a day after Kate and William's festive charity video.
More bad news for the NHS. It's been ranked 20th in the world. We'll debate whether or not our health system is actually up to scratch.
And Annie Shuttleworth with the weather picture.
Good morning. After the unsettled day yesterday, there'll be more dry and fine weather around today, but not for everyone. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
Listen, thanks very much indeed for getting in touch. 3 various things here on Rwanda. Donald says, do you need any further proof that the existing Conservative MPs are a bunch of spineless cowards? There needs to be a general election and a new party needs to emerge. Reform UK or the new Conservatives.
Yeah, spineless seems to be the word of the morning. Stephen said it as well, and Claire says she's absolutely fuming with the results. The guy is deluded. She's talking about Rishi Sunak there.
But Calvin sums up what a lot of you are thinking. He says, we have to leave the ECHR. It's that simple. Let us know how simple you think it is. gbviews@gbnews.com.
So it is our top story this morning, and it is relief for the Prime Minister this morning as he is, well, he's seen off a rebellion, hasn't he? This was his Rwanda bill, and he managed to get it through the Commons last night.
Order. Order. The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Unlocked.
Well, the emergency legislation went through with a majority of 44 after Conservative hardliners backed away from their threats to vote it down. No Conservative MP voted against. Instead, 29 of them abstained.
But the Prime Minister can't really relax yet. The Tory rebels have warned that they would try to defeat the bill at the next reading unless it's hardened in the coming weeks.
However, as former Immigration Minister Damien Green said at the vote yesterday, any attempts to harden the Rwanda bill could result in more moderate Tory MPs backing away.
If the amendments actually either break our international commitments or mean that our commitment to the rule of law is questioned, then in the One Nation group we've said, we've told the government very openly and said publicly that we would vote against them.
Well, let's get some analysis on all of this from our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. The Prime Minister was seen hugging the Chief Whip in the chamber last night. He will have been very relieved with the result. But as everybody's saying, job well done for now.
Well, absolutely. The problems are far from over for him. It wasn't crunch time yesterday after all that excitement and chatter in Westminster that Rishi Sunak was going to be defeated. He actually won with a pretty decent majority. But that is only because the rebel MPs on both the left and the right of his party seem to be biding their time. Those on the right of the party, they call themselves the Five Families, these different groupings of right-wing MPs, abstained. There were 29 actual abstentions, and they are saying that they will not vote for a bill at the third reading or committee stage unless it is hardened up. Meanwhile, of course, you've got Damien Green there, who leads the One Nation Tories, a caucus of about 100 Conservatives on the left of the party. They're saying they will only vote for the bill if it remains in its unamended state. And now, if you look at the numbers quite carefully, those 29 abstentions, that's a very important number, because, in fact, it's the exact number of Conservative MPs that would be needed to vote down the bill at a later stage. You just need 29 of them, and 29 of them yesterday were prepared to abstain. Rishi Sunak is going to have to walk a very, very thin tightrope here and make a lot of compromises in order to get this through. And of course, what we haven't talked about yet is even if he does manage to get it through the House of Commons, it'll then go over to the House of Lords. The House of Lords, only about a third of the Lords are actually Conservatives. They tend to be thought of as far more left-leaning than the House of Commons. And it is very likely that they will side with Labour and the One Nationers and say that this Rwanda bill actually strays too close to breaking international law for them. If that happens, they could end up amending it. It could get sent back to the Commons. And you get into a state of what's called ping-pong, where the legislation just goes from one house to the other, being amended at every stage. And it could end up pretty much unrecognisable from the legislation that we saw laid out yesterday. And that in itself would be very, very damaging for Rishi Sunak, because he has chosen to make this policy a central tenet of his premiership. He has asked the public to judge him on whether he manages to stop the small boats. So it's not looking great for him, although this morning he'll be breathing a sigh of relief.
Central tenets of his premiership, we obviously think about his 5 pledges. One of those was to grow the economy. Breaking news in the last 6 minutes. This has been released by the Office for National Statistics that the UK economy contracted by 0.3% in October. So, you know, he's just managed to squeak through on that vote last night, and then bad news this morning.
Well, absolutely. And what we've seen happen to the economy throughout this year is we've seen it rise just above zero, just below zero. We're basically teetering on the edge of a recession, just stagnating constantly, which is not what Rishi Sunak promised. Meanwhile, of course, some of those other pledges, we've seen NHS waiting lists grow to the highest they've ever been. There are over 7 million people on NHS waiting lists in England and Wales. Rishi Sunak asked the public to judge him on those 5 pledges. He doesn't seem to be doing too well.
Very much indeed. Well, let's bring in now our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, in all of this. He can give us his take on what happened in the Commons last night. Lots of debate about perhaps why the Prime Minister has attached himself so much to a policy that seems, well, almost impossible to see through.
Yes, I think that immigration is one of those things that really does sort of divide the Conservative Party and also divides the nation as well, both legal and illegal. So Rishi Sunak was perhaps a bit rash to actually promise to stop the boats by the end of the year. Clearly that won't happen. And even if this bill ever does go through, and as Olivia has just said, it's got to get through, even if it gets through the Commons, it's got to spend probably a year in the Lords. Even if it does get through, there's a big question about whether it will stop the boats. Even if this law had been in place from the beginning of the year, you're talking about a 1 in 50 chance of a migrant crossing the Channel ending up in Rwanda.
The other outcome then, Nigel, of all of this is it might not work, but also it could bring about an early election. I suppose all bets are off, really, on when exactly that could be.
Yes, I think that the way that the Prime Minister is gearing everything up is he was looking at an election probably on May the 2nd, which would be the same day as local elections. So what you've seen is his promise to get flights going to Rwanda in the spring. That would be in advance of the election. You've also seen the cuts to national insurance. So what that would mean is that when that comes in January, people would have the benefit of that for in 3 months of pay packets leading up to an election, plus the idea then of a March budget where there might be more tax cuts. So obviously he's penciled in that date as a kind of, that's when he thinks about going to the country and he'll have the best chance. It doesn't mean it'll happen because other events could actually knock that off course. So maybe he would have to go long. But at the moment, my bet would be on a May election.
And just going back to the vote last night, I mean, just looking at the views that have come in this morning, a lot of our viewers absolutely enraged, people calling Tory MPs spineless, people are furious with Rishi Sunak. Just explain a little bit about how the whipping process works, because, you know, we've seen, haven't we, that absolutely nobody voted against the bill in spite of all the noise that was around at the time, and there will have been a 3-line whip on this, which means, you know, they talk about the dark arts of the whips. Are these threats? Are these promises, carrots, sticks? Talk us through what might have been offered.
A mixture of the whole lot. That the big threat really to MPs is that Rishi Sunak will at some stage turn this into a vote of confidence in the government. Now, what that means is that in the event that he loses that vote of confidence, there would be an instant general election, which obviously Tory MPs with the polls as they are don't fancy at all. However, even worse for them is that if they vote against the government in such a confidence vote, what that means is that they lose the whip. And if they lose the whip, they can't stand as Tory MPs in that election. So they also lose their job. So it is basically a threat to them, which is what Rishi Sunak is banking on to finally get it through the Commons if there's still opposition early next year.
That with the Lords, though, can he? Always good to get your insight. Thank you so much, Nigel. Appreciate it. Right, with the time 7:11, let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. And as we've just been hearing, Downing Street has said that migrants living on the controversial Bibby Stockholm barge have been assessed for emotional trauma. Well, this follows on from the death of an asylum seeker on board who's understood to have taken his own life. The first asylum seekers were brought back to the vessel in October. The serial baby killer Lucy Letby has been stripped of her nursing credentials after a panel ordered her to be struck off from the register. Letby had told the Nursing and Midwifery Council that she didn't object to losing her credentials, but said she maintained her innocence. The United Nations General Assembly has voted in favour of a non-binding resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. US, Austria and Israel were among 10 members to vote against it. The United Kingdom abstained. This comes as the US President Joe Biden says Israel's starting to lose global support over what he described as the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been dubbed amongst the biggest losers of 2023 by The Hollywood Reporter. It comes as the couple's foundation, Archewell, have released their records for the year, revealing a significant £8.7 million drop in revenue in the space of 12 months. We'll be discussing that with Majesty magazine editor Ingrid Seward shortly.
£8.7 million less than last year. So have they fallen out of favour? That's the question. Text us here or email us, Eamonn and Isabel, gbviews@gbnews.com. The weather picture, if you're heading out today, let's go to Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's got us off to a more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
Just a relief to see the rain stop for 5 minutes today. It's just never ending.
When you're dodging the rain, you're in supermarkets. We were talking about this self-scanning business today. Jeanette says, I've used self-scanning since it started because of my back problem, and I find it painful standing in queues. What I do is I leave my shopping in the trolley in case I'm spot checked and bag everything after I've been through the checkout. What I do hate are the large trolleys which have been taken off the trucks, emptied onto the shelves and left abandoned in the aisles along with empty boxes. Is that something you can relate to? I don't know.
No, I've not encountered that. No. But John says you don't have to agree to spot checking your shopping. Any action that prevents you leaving without your consent is an arrest. Tell them that if they want to check it, then it's under duress and an unlawful detention. And if they persist, record it on your phone and take them to the civil court and you will win compensation. It happened to me some time ago and the staff member and security backed off when I claimed unlawful detention. My question is, why would you be so aggressively resistant to having your stuff spot checked? I've never stolen anything in my life. They're welcome to check my bags anytime.
Well, you're not everyone.
Yeah, but I just think stealing, it's wrong.
It's one of the 10 Commandments, isn't it?
Exactly.
Shall not steal.
Along with don't be greedy, which when you're in a supermarket, probably already broken that one.
Do not covet thy neighbour's wife.
Okay.
They don't cover their neighbour's husband in it.
Well, there you go. I'm all right then.
Yeah. We shop at Costco and all shopping trolleys are checked on exit. So what does that actually mean? What does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't know. Oh, look, Gary would hate me. It really upsets me when I see kids playing with a handheld laser. When I walk around the supermarket, I think parents should be more responsible. I'm not saying they're playing with it. They're actually helping me. No. One of them's doing the thing. The other one puts it in the bag.
It's a game.
They enjoy it, and it keeps them from moaning.
People who use the self-checkout do not think of the job losses, says Ian. Absolutely right. It's not my job to do their job. That's what I think. But it is your job to enter the Great British Giveaway. It is absolutely fan-dabby-doozy. Here's how you do it.
Yes.
It's the Great British Giveaway, your chance to win 3 amazing prizes that will get your new year off to a great start. First, there's a terrific £10,000 in cash to be won. Imagine what you can do with that. We'll also give you a tech update with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, plus £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store. The retail therapy could be on us. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
OK, still to come, where do you think the NHS ranks on patient safety in the world? The results might surprise you. You can find out what they are, where the NHS sits after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're going to debate the NHS now, and a new report says the NHS does not rank in the top 20 countries for patient safety.
Yes, so researchers at Imperial College London looked at 38 health systems. They found that Estonia, Israel and Austria provide safer care than here in Britain.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think, is safer care the yardstick? Is that everything you've got to judge by? I suppose you don't want to come out dead.
You want prognosis as well, and you want outcomes. Yeah, it's not just about not slipping when you're there.
Yes, you want the treatment to be in the forefront of the world, better treatment than anyone else, market-leading treatment. But today we're asking just how broken is the NHS? I don't believe it is broken at all, and I've had a lot of experience of it in the past 2 years. So, is it time we did something about it? Is it broken? Let's find out. Joining us now to debate this, retired consultant paediatrician Dr. Ross Jones and journalist Julie Cook. Julie, where do you stand on the NHS? Is it broken?
I don't think it's broken. I think it's fragmented, but I don't think it's broken. I know you mentioned that you've had wonderful experiences with the NHS. I've been lucky enough to have great experiences for my children. My son broke his arm when he was 6, and they were absolutely incredible. I had to have emergency gallbladder surgery one Christmas Eve, and they were incredible. My father died of cancer and was given incredible care, both to try and save his life and then palliative. And I know that's a success story, and it means I'm very lucky. I'm aware that other people don't have those experiences. But I don't think it's broken. I think it's fragmented in that it is no longer an NHS. I think it is just several NHS trusts which have an almost Russian roulette sense of which trust you live under dictates how your experience will be.
OK, well, those are our experiences, Julie. Dr. Ross Jones has worked within the NHS. And Dr. Jones, do you see it differently?
Well, I agree with Julie. I think to say it's broken is perhaps a bit melodramatic. And it's interesting looking at that report. We're just behind Belgium, we're ahead of Germany, we're well ahead of France. And you can't expect to be the top in everything. But I think the public will be well aware of how the NHS is struggling. It's struggling with huge increase in waiting lists. I think partly because of the total monofocus on COVID for the last, well, certainly for 2 years. We're just theoretically out of that. But even now, we're back into, rises in numbers and this, that and the other, and not concentrating on everything else. So there's a huge backlog. And I think I work with a group called Doctors for Patients UK, and the staff on the ground are saying that they've got huge absence in staff, they've got really poor staff morale. There was a recent survey, 40% of GPs under the age of 45 were looking to retire within the next 5 years. And about 40% of junior doctors were looking to leave the NHS within 5 years of qualifying. So, we do need to do something about this. And I think if you have an unhappy workforce, you also don't give the best care to patients.
And Julie, they do have an unhappy workforce. You can't deny that. I mean, you only have to look at all the industrial action that we've seen, unprecedented, right from the top, from consultants through junior doctors to nurses as well. What does that tell us? That has an impact on patient safety. Of course it does.
It does. Yes. And I think one of the things that is the huge...
Sorry, just to Julie, first of all, if that's OK.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, and you, as our other guest rightly says, you cannot have a competent and highly competent workforce if they're miserable, stressed, full of anxiety, and their colleagues are off. I also think that the NHS is struggling because it wasn't designed back after the Second World War to deal with the things it deals with now. Rightly, as our other guest just said, COVID has really set the NHS back massively. I don't think we can overestimate how much it has. I also think things like obesity and an aging population is not something we can throw around willy-nilly. It's a massive, massive problem for the NHS, is people's attitude to their own health. And obesity wasn't something that was around when the NHS was started, and neither was the huge ageing population we have now.
Dr. Ross, what about you? If you were to be able to put a fix, 1, 2 or 3 things that you could do to the NHS to get it up that league table, what would you do?
Well, I think the most important thing actually is listening to patients, face-to-face care. I think that's something that went down the pan with COVID and hasn't really picked back up again. And I think there's been a lot about mistakes made if you don't see patients face-to-face. And there's a huge amount of bureaucracy, which I think, and management input, micromanagement, so that is wasting the time of our clinical staff, and that actually demoralises them. And this public report, I think, is a very good example. They have 250 metrics in this. I looked at the actual global report. It runs to, 300 plus pages. They have 89 metrics in this particular dashboard, and they concentrated only on 4 for the report. But if you're spending all your time worrying about 89 metrics, and they even in their opening said, we can only improve what we can measure. And I don't think that's right. You can improve your patient-doctor, patient-nurse, patient-health professionals interaction face-to-face, and that's not very easy to measure.
Okay,
and
very important.
And Julie, what would you do if you could move the NHS up that list? What would it be? What would you impact on it?
I think 2 things. I think, number one, we as individuals need to take responsibility for our own health. I think one of the main problems in this report was, I believe, heart disease outcomes and heart attack outcomes. We have an obese population that I think we need to look at. Secondly, people need to turn up for their appointments. There are so many missed appointments which waste millions and millions of pounds every year. If we love and cherish our NHS, we have to respect it.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed, both of you, for giving us your respect towards the NHS. Dr. Ross Jones, who's a retired consultant paediatrician, and Julie Cook, who is a journalist there. I came away from my hospital stays, Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, spinal injuries unit, absolutely incredible, so impressed. But if I could do anything, I would reduce the number of agency staff.
If you reduce the number of agency staff, it would collapse because the nurses don't have enough.
The quality's not good enough. What happens is the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing when it comes, and there's a certain amount of jealousy as to what agency staff earn over staff.
We're going to turn our attention now to political matters. The Prime Minister is set to face his first PMQs later this morning since the failed in-party rebellion, we could say since his success over the Rwanda belt. Labour likely to use today to draw more attention to the chaos at Downing Street. Let's speak to Thangam Debonair this morning for us. She is the Shadow Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Good morning to you. First of all, your reaction then yesterday. Not a single Tory MP voted against this bill in the end.
Well, it would have been quite absurd for the second reading to be defeated. That's almost never happened in the history of Parliament. And it's even astonishing that we spent the weekend speculating about whether or not Rishi Sunak, with his majority, it's quite a large majority of MPs in the Commons, couldn't get the bill through. Now, there's a long way to go, but what we saw over the weekend was indicative of the weak leadership that we have from Rishi Sunak and the total chaos that there is in this government. And moreover, the fact that they are concentrating on a plan that's never going to work, when there are people up and down the country worried sick about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to pay their mortgage if they come off a fixed rate, or their rent. There's so many problems in this country that need tackling, for which Labour has got a plan. The Tories seem to be absolutely nowhere on this, and we're just in chaos yet again.
Well, would you think have a plan for the Rwanda plan if you achieve power next year? Would it go straight in the bin?
Well, we know that this plan isn't going to work. The Permanent Secretary of the Home Office has said that there's no deterrent effect. The Court of Appeal has said that it's probably illegal. We know this plan isn't going to work, and the Prime Minister's facing criticisms from all sides about this. And what we've got at the moment is a plan, if we can even call it that would only ever take a few hundred people. Now, that's not going to deal with the backlog, and the Tories seem to have forgotten this is a problem of their own making. Just last year, 100,000 more people joined the asylum queue, and we've got a backlog of 130,000. Now, the Labour Party would recruit 1,000 more caseworkers to deal with that backlog urgently, because we may have people who are in hotels costing the taxpayer now £8 million per day, eye-watering, especially in a cost of living crisis, and without processing them, we've got no idea whether or not there are people there who really shouldn't be here, who are a danger to our country and our national security. Under a Labour government, with our plan, we would be getting them processed, and we'd be sending them home if they're not supposed to be here. But if they are entitled to be here, we want them to be able to get on with working and contributing to this country as they want to do, so that they can get on with their lives. Some of these people are Afghan interpreters and their families who we promised to keep safe. We are failing them. The government is failing the British taxpayer at a cost of £8 million per day on hotels, and failing them with the Rwanda plan that's never going to work.
Do you think we've failed the man on board the Bibby Stockholm who died yesterday?
Absolutely. It's utterly tragic to hear that news, and my heart goes out to him and his family and people who knew him. It's desperately sad, and I think it points to the fact that we need an actual plan for dealing with the backlog. Now, there will be an investigation clearly into the circumstances of this man's death, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment in more detail on that specific example. But we do need a government that is ready to tackle the backlog, so we're not having to use boats like this or barges like this.
I think our audience would agree that we do need an actual plan to deal with the backlog, and I'm still not clear what yours is. I mean, you say 1,000 extra caseworkers, that comes at a cost. But yes. If I could just finish my point, you're going to pay extra money for those caseworkers, that's absolutely fine. But just tell me how you speed up that system when these people are arriving on their shores, either deliberately or as a consequence of fleeing a disaster, without any ID. How do you speed up that process? I mean, I want to hear your actual plan.
With 1,000 caseworkers who are at a higher grade than those currently used, who are skilled and competent, the government over the last 8 years since I became an MP has ground down the asylum seeker caseworker system, so that the people are just not getting answers within months or years. That's on the Tories. Now, under Labour, with 1,000 more caseworkers, we would be processing people quickly as soon as they got here. We would also have a returns agreement with our neighbouring countries so that we could return people properly and promptly, like the last Labour government did, I have to say, in contrast to the current Tory one. We would make sure that we had family reunion arrangements for those people who are entitled to come, for instance, from Afghanistan, so that they don't feel forced to put their lives in the hands of dangerous people traffickers. And we would pay for that by not spending the money that the government has committed to the Rwanda plan, which is never going to work. That's an actual plan that Labour's got, as opposed to the government plan, which is never going to work.
The government would say they are continuing to look for further returns agreements. So that is not a big distinction with you on all of that. I just finally want to get your reaction to the breaking news this morning. This is the surprise contraction of the economy, down 0.3%. It was expected to flatline. It was up in September, and it's down 0.3. Quite a shock this morning.
Well, shocking but not surprising, because we've had 13 years of stagnant growth under successive Tory governments with no industrial strategy. In fact, if you go to the government's website, you just see the words archived. This is not a government that's trying to grow the economy. It's not a government that's paying attention to the cost of living crisis facing working people up and down the country. This is a government that is asleep. It is failing the country. It's focused on gimmicks when we have a weak Prime Minister who doesn't seem to know what working people are going through at the minute. It's distressing, and there will be people waking up this morning wondering how they're going to get through the winter. Now, under a Labour government, we would have a plan for a decade of national renewal, tackling that cost of living crisis as a priority, but putting the economy at the heart of everything we do. Because without firm fiscal rules, which under Rachel Reeves as our Chancellor we would have, you cannot do anything. And that's the problem with this government. They have failed to grow the economy, so our hospitals are crumbling. We would do something about that. Our schools are not able to cope with crises like the rack in the roofs of some of them. That's on the government. So when we look at this falling levels of growth and failure on the cost of living crisis, I'm afraid to say we have to point firmly at Rishi Sunak, who's been Chancellor during some of those years and is now currently Prime Minister, flailing around with gimmicks and failing to get a grip on the country's problems.
Thangam Debonair, thank you very much indeed. Thangam is the Shadow Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport.
Lots of breaking news this morning. Also coming out of Dubai, at COP28, almost 200 countries agree for the first time to transition away from fossil fuels. We'll be talking about that next in Headline Makers.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Dr. Rennie Honderkamp and Norman Baker are reviewing stories that are making the headlines today. Good to see you again, both of you. So, Norman, we want to start. Plea for America to unblock nearly £500 billion. No, 50 billion.
50
Sorry,
billion,
I can't say
yeah.
50 billion pounds of aid to Ukraine.
Well, this is a serious situation for Ukraine. I mean, we've got a position where people are beginning to doubt whether Ukraine can actually win this war. There's a kind of stalemate, almost like a First World War stalemate in Ukraine, where neither side is making very much progress. And there are some people in America, particularly the Republican Party, who are saying, we want to know where this is all going, all this money. And they've also linked it, quite illogically in my view, to the issue of Mexican immigration on the south of America. So
the link being what?
Well, there isn't really a link. Apart from they want the Democrats to give in on some of the demands for immigration from the Mexican border in return for giving money for Ukraine, which seems to me an illogical connection. But the point is, as Biden has actually said, if we don't get money to Ukraine, this is a great Christmas present for President Putin.
Well, exactly, and we've just been talking about COP28 and this deal that's been struck, and it was only last week we saw him swanning around in the UAE. He seems to be emboldened at the moment. We've heard from Bill Browder in the last few days, who's a big spokesperson against the Putin regime, saying that Ukraine's just weeks away from running out of ammunition. Do we think in the West we've run out of sympathy? Has the situation in the Middle East kind of encouraged sort of war fatigue in a way?
Well, I think it has to a degree, and certainly the news media are more interested in Palestine and Gaza Strip at the moment than they are in Ukraine. And the reality is that the Russians, Putin in particular, is doing what Stalin did. He's just throwing hundreds of thousands of men into the war who will get killed. He doesn't care. And he's got so much... That's his resource, his men.
Yeah. You know, we're talking there about how close Ukraine is to running out of munitions, but the same could be said for Russia. We actually don't know the situation that they're in.
No, but they got more troops, and he doesn't mind how many get killed. And they've all been released from the prisons. All these prisoners who are guilty of God knows what have been shot into the front line, and if they survive 3 months, they can go back to civil life. I mean, that's the deal.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the question is, and it was the question at the very beginning, wasn't it? You know, can Ukraine win this war without the West actually getting physically involved? And I think we've reached that point where they can't.
Well, you see, do you think that Putin can actually believe his luck, that he started this war, that he continues this war? By and large, you know what I'm trying to say here, without any huge reaction from the West. Now, I know there is reaction, but there are no ground forces, for instance. There's nothing that... It could have been worse for him.
He thought he'd win Ukraine in 3 days. And, you know, 2 years on, or nearly 2 years on, he hasn't won it. And the economy in Russia is tanking. But what Russia has got, or what Putin's got, is massive control over the population, control over all the media over there. And they'll do what they're told. I mean, that's the reality.
Well, and an election in March next year.
A so-called election which he will win.
Odds on, he's going to win.
Oh. Yeah, by a thumping majority, I'm sure.
But there's this thing that they're going to do next year called the Peace Games, right? And this is ahead of is it the Olympics or the Commonwealth next year? I can't remember which it is. But ahead of whatever it is, the big athletics meeting, there is an open invitation for countries around the world to attend Putin's Peace Games, of which an awful lot are saying yes to.
Well, you get rid of the difficult bit by the title, don't you? It's the same as the Democratic Republic of North Korea, which isn't very democratic.
I'd be staggered if many Western countries turned up for that.
Yeah. Renee, let's talk about this art teacher based in Paris, and she's now saying she fears for her life. She was teaching her class about Renaissance art and has offended some Muslim pupils, but this has gone massive.
Of course it has, and this is the problem, isn't it? That teachers are trying to do their job, and they're trying to show our children cultural.
But these aren't children; these are Muslim children. These aren't
but
all
still
children. No. But the specific thing is that it's an offence to Muslim children.
It is, but unfortunately, if they want to be in the state education system in a country that is not a Muslim country, then they might be shown things that they wouldn't see outside of that. And that would be no different to me being at school when I was not a Catholic, being taught in RE about Catholic religious symbols. You know, we have to teach our children that they're learning, that they don't have the right to be.
OK, now, so what is so offensive about this this painting? What is going on here?
Nothing.
There's nothing much going on, is there?
For Muslims is what's offensive, isn't it?
There's an example I had when I was flying to Reunion Island, actually, and we stopped off to refuel in Saudi Arabia. and the thought police came on the plane. And the French guy next to me actually had an art magazine, and it had a picture a bit like that, Les Grands Beignets, if you know that particular piece of art, in this magazine. And they wouldn't let the plane take off until they got paper and sellotape and covered over this picture.
How did they know that he had that?
Well, they were going round seeing what was happening. They're looking for alcohol, and they go around and saw this picture, and they said, well, you've got to cover it up before the plane takes off. They had sellotape and paper to cover up this picture.
So the more serious point of this is we mustn't forget there is a teacher in the UK from Batley who is in hiding 2 years after he showed something that was deemed to be offensive to Muslims about Muhammad, and he has not been able to return to his life, nor have his children or his wife. Grovelling apologies were made to the community. This is not integration.
Yeah.
This is not learning about the past and accepting this for what it is, a bit of historic art.
But you can understand the teacher's position when there have been a number of teachers who've been murdered in France for not dissimilar things. Also, the context, I suppose, to all of this, Macron, like Rishi Sunak, well, actually, unlike Rishi Sunak, who was successful last night, he just suffered a big defeat, didn't he, on trying to tighten up immigration.
Without even a vote, actually. Yeah.
So similar problems for...
Well, I'm in trouble there. I better not invite anybody Muslim to my house because I like a nude. My kids say, yeah, Dad, you disguise it as art. You're just a perv, really. That's what they think. But I do like a nude. Do you like a nude?
I like the human body.
Yes, I'm...
The worst thing about the nudes in the house I grew up in, my parents both paint. And my dad paints a lot of nudes, but unfortunately the subject in a lot of those nudes is my mum. And we were trick-or-treating
So were
recently.
these real-life art models he was painting?
No, just my mum.
Oh, just your mum?
So we were trick-or-treating with all my new friends at my kids' new school recently, and they answered the door, and there's these pictures of my mum with her boobs out in the hall, and I'm just thinking, Mum, this is so...
So I have a confession to make, Isabel. I actually have a cast of my pregnant bum and boobs, which is on my
Well, I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, totally
I do think that would be very, very good, yeah. I have lots of nudes, and people come into the house and they say, oh, who is that? Is that anybody we know? I keep saying it's my wife, but nobody knows the difference. She gets the blame. It's not, though. OK, what else have you got there? Oh, the Sussexes. Let's talk about Norman, no mates. And so they've got no money, no mates, whatever. What have you got to say about this?
If they had a share price, it would have collapsed by now.
Well, it kind of has, hasn't it?
Well, it has. In a sense, it has. The story here is that charity has been hit by $11 million drop in donations, and they're actually running a deficit now in their foundation, which is pretty serious. And the fact is that they have, your word, tanked. I mean, they've lost all credibility, I'm afraid, and they've lost the support. They're coming across as whining. These court cases, which are attacking the press over here, I don't think people are in support of what they're trying to say. I don't understand how Harry can say he's worried about coming to the UK for his security when he's living in the States, which has got massive gun crime all over the place. I mean, I'd be more worried about living in the States than living over here.
I think he does have lots and lots of security in the States around his house and around him. But I think, they need to start reading the writing on the wall, don't they?
Yes.
This is yet another message to them that people are tired of their narcissistic obsession with themselves. And as I said to Norman in the break, when the only thing you have in your life is this obsession, you have to keep feeding it and pushing yourself out there. It's time for them to step back, be quiet, and get on with a normal life.
Or, Renee, concentrate on one particular aspect of charity. So, for instance, you could see it working both in the States and in the UK. War wounded, to concentrate on that, those Invictus Games and whatever. But maybe when they split the message, if you ask me what do they stand for, I'm not sure I know.
But also to only break your silence by releasing this video to, counteract the discussion about the funds in their charity, but not say anything at all about Endgame, which names accidentally, but it still repeats the racism allegations against the royal family, I think also serves them very, very poorly. They should not be silent on that issue if they had nothing to do with Endgame.
OK. Writing essays with artificial intelligence. Oxford students have been told to use AI to help write their essays. Now, how does that stack up?
This infuriates me, Eamonn, it really does. So I was explaining earlier that I've done A-levels both in 1987 and 1996. I resat my biology and chemistry A-levels for various reasons. And the difference in the difficulty was just so palpable, it was unbelievable. So we are slowly dumbing down education. And here we've got one of allegedly the best universities in the world, and we are telling the students that they can actually write their initial draft using AI, but as long as they then edit it. Now, I don't know about you, Isabel, but I feel it's that blank piece of paper that is the hardest thing to break when you're writing an essay. And once you get to the editing point, actually you could crack open the champagne because you know you're on the home run.
I think editing is a particular skill, and we shouldn't underestimate the power that editors have. They spot the problems, they can make things better, and I do think that there is a talent there. But you're totally right, I think it kills creativity. Yeah. And if all people are becoming as sort of editing, then that's really sad. Creativity is going to be killed, I think, by AI.
Actually our skills. We are taking away skills from our children. They're all on screens all of the time. You know, they're not learning to read or write properly, and now they're not learning to actually form their own ideas into an argument. And a good essay is one that argues well.
Absolutely. I used to love writing essays, did you?
Yeah, it was never any difficulty to me.
Still got a lump on my finger.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, from
hours of scribing.
This business about Stonehenge, and I do think this is something we should be doing on the programme. We need somebody who is proposing this bypass road, and we need somebody who's opposing it as well.
Debate for tomorrow, maybe.
I do think we've called for this before, but now we're at a situation where UNESCO, the World Heritage Site, could get involved in this.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the situation is that you've got a road at the moment, the A303, which is very, very close to the Stones, which is I think a single carriageway at that particular point. It cannot be doing the Stones any good to have all this traffic so close to it, apart from anything else. And you can't really appreciate the Stones when there's so much traffic going by. So the idea of taking the road away from the Stones seems to me to be quite sensible. But if you have a tunnel, which people are objecting to, then there's massive disruption while the road is built, and also you can dislodge and damage the archaeological remains which are under the ground.
Why is everything so overly difficult? We were just saying this yesterday. A viewer messaged in, plant a bunch of leylandii along, that absorbs loads of the CO2, protects the trees, stops the rubbernecking, job done.
But then you can't see the stones.
Well, exactly, you wouldn't be able to from the tunnel either. But it's just, you know.
Not a great fan of leylandii, but there has to be a solution.
But they are, you know, indestructible, aren't they?
Yeah, the solution has got. I don't know geographically where it goes, but the solution must be to take the road away from the Stones in such a way that it doesn't damage the archaeological remains.
Just plant the trees, and you don't need to bother. That's my view.
I do have to say, I've never visited the Stones, but I've been on the road a number of times, and. It's a great disappointment because they're very small, aren't they?
Only at a distance. When you're up close, they are.
But when you're on the road, there's not much to look at. It's quite tiny.
I believe in the Second World War they were going to the MOD almost used them as target practice.
No.
Yeah, in the Second World War.
You used to be able to sit on them and things in the 50s, and people going on holiday to Cornwall. People would sit and have their sandwiches and lean against them, but not.
Well, the thing that amazes me about the pyramids at Giza in Egypt is that certainly I was there 4 years ago, and you could walk all over them. You could do whatever you wanted on them. I don't know if it's still the same, but it amazed me that you could clamber all over such a historic.
It's like the Great Wall of China, isn't it? You can walk all over that, and it really is, when you're there, quite awe-inspiring.
OK. We'll leave you with that lovely view, and these guys will be back in 40 minutes' time.
Here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's got us off to more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good to see you. It is a Wednesday morning, the 13th of December. Breakfast on GB News, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister survived the biggest threat yet to his leadership as the Rwanda bill passed through its first hurdle in the Commons. So is the Prime Minister out of the woods? Olivia Utley has close tabs on the situation from Westminster.
After all the excitement and chatter yesterday, the actual vote ended up being a bit of a damp squib, with the government winning with a larger than expected majority. But the problems are far from over for the beleaguered Prime Minister.
COP28 in Dubai, some positive news. Almost 200 countries agree for the first time to transition away from fossil fuels. We'll be bringing you the latest.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been dubbed amongst the biggest losers of 2023 by The Hollywood Reporter as they face a funding shortfall. We'll be discussing that with Majesty Magazine editor Ingrid Stewart.
Paul Coyte will have your sport on this Wednesday morning. Good morning, my friend.
Morning. Manchester United out of the Champions League and out of Europe with a whimper. Not very good. Newcastle playing the Champions League tonight have got to win. And also that horrible story of the referee being attacked in Turkey, where we'll have the former chief of referees, Keith Hackett, will be with us live.
Good.
Well done.
And when you see this ref in his hospital bed, black eye, everything, quite sickening, all of that. The weather, what's it going to look like? Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. After the unsettled day yesterday, there'll be more dry and fine weather around today, but not for everyone. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
Thank you, Annie. You can join in any of our discussions. What have you got?
Well, lots of you getting in touch on the Rwanda vote. John says you can tell who's running the Tories now, can't you? David Cameron, Rishi Sunak is his little puppet. And lots of people really disappointed with what happened yesterday. Do you need any further proof that the existing Conservative Party MPs are a bunch of spineless cowards?
Yeah.
You're not happy.
And a lot of you would be happier if we withdrew from the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights. And let us know your views, gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet at GBNews.
And so our top story this morning, relief for the Prime Minister as he survives the Tory rebellion and gets his Rwanda bill through the House of Commons with a majority voting in favour.
Well, the emergency legislation passed with a 44-vote majority after hardliners backed away from their threats to vote it down. No Conservative MP actually voted against the bill. Instead, 29 of them abstained.
Well, Labour are piling on the pressure. Earlier, we spoke to the Shadow Secretary for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. And this is what she had to say.
It would have been quite absurd for the second reading to be defeated. That's almost never happened in the history of Parliament. And it's even astonishing that we spent the weekend speculating about whether or not Rishi Sunak, with his majority, it's quite a large majority of MPs in the Commons, couldn't get the bill through. Now, there's a long way to go, but what we saw over the weekend was indicative of the weak leadership that we have from Rishi Sunak and the total chaos that there is in this government. And moreover, the fact that they are concentrating on a plan that's never going to work.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley in Westminster. I mean, first of all, just a reaction to what Labour was saying there. And I was trying to push them on what exactly she meant by speeding up, trying to process things more quickly. Just, we have an actual plan, but I didn't get to the bottom of what that actually meant. But in terms of the Prime Minister, a little bit of respite, if not for very long.
Well, absolutely. It feels more like a stay of execution than Rishi Sunak actually being let off the hook. He did win that vote yesterday, but he won it only because at the very last minute yesterday, he agreed to make some sort of concessions to his Conservative right-wing backbenchers in order to persuade them not to vote against the bill. Now, we don't yet really know exactly what those concessions are, but what we think it might be is that essentially those MPs have a problem with the bill because they think that too many individual migrants would be able to lodge complaints with the courts. The bill only declares that Rwanda is a safe country generally. It doesn't allow for each individual migrant's circumstances. Now, what's rumoured is that Rishi Sunak told those Conservative MPs that he would be prepared to add a few tweaks to that clause of the bill, essentially tightening it up and making it very explicitly clear what sort of mitigating circumstances circumstances a migrant could claim in order not to be deported. And he said that those circumstances would be very, very few and far between: women in the later stages of pregnancy or people with illnesses which couldn't be treated in Rwanda. So it sounds like those are the sort of concessions he might have offered those right-wing MPs. But of course, the problem is that the further he goes in trying to placate the right of the party, the more likely he is to start to annoy the left of the party, that group of about 100 Conservative MPs who call themselves the One Nationers, who claim that if this bill goes any further, then it'll start to stray too far away from international law to be acceptable to them. And if you look at the numbers carefully, there were 29 MPs who abstained yesterday on the right of the party. If all of those 29 were to vote down the bill next time, if they don't get the tweaks and amendments that they want to see, then it could be defeated at this stage. And I say at this stage because, of course, there are lots more stages to go. Even if it does get through the Commons at the third reading and committee stage, it'll then go to the House of Lords. House of Lords is more left-leaning than the Commons. There are only a third of Lords are actual Conservative peers. So it's very likely to get into quite a lot of trouble there. We could end up seeing this bill go backwards and forwards from the Commons to the Lords for over a year, which I don't think is what the public were expecting when Rishi Sunak said in January of this year that he would stop the boats.
Finally, Olivia, a word about the economy. The Chancellor in the last few moments has been speaking about this surprise contraction for October. Some people have been blaming it on rain. Other people are saying it's because of the pain and the hurt of interest rates. But he's saying it's inevitable that GDP will be subdued whilst interest rates are doing their job to bring down inflation. So is this all part of the plan then?
Well, Jeremy Hunt, to give him his due, has said repeatedly that he would be prepared, really, to see a recession if it were going to bring down inflation. So perhaps this really was part of the plan. That said, it doesn't feel like a very good look for the government. They said that they would get growth going again. And month after month, we've seen the economy either dipping just below zero or just above zero, but essentially stagnating. And this drop of 0.3% in October is actually higher than economists were predicting. They were thinking it was going to be a drop of 0.1%. So at the moment, Rishi Sunak is really struggling to show that he is achieving any of his 5 pledges, apart from, of course, inflation is slowly coming down.
OK, Olivia, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, as the Prime Minister's Rwanda bill lives to see another day, what next for asylum seekers and migration? Let's go to the director of the Sanctuary Foundation, Dr. Krish Kandaya, and former Immigration Security Advisor Henry Bolton on this one. Henry, last night we've got to committee stage on this bill. Do you think it will deliver?
No, in a word. Good morning. This is one of the things that I find quite mind-boggling about this whole process, is that the government has become absolutely fixated on Rwanda as, if you like, the silver bullet that's going to stop the boats. It's not. And indeed, I utterly dispute the Prime Minister's assertion that it will be an effective deterrent. The migrants that are crossing the channel are already in a pipeline. It's very difficult for them to turn back. They are being encouraged by the people smugglers to move, who are countering any government narrative. And indeed, they don't even receive the government narrative. They don't read the British newspapers or watch British television. And only if there are literally, I think, thousands of asylum seekers who eventually get sent to Rwanda, might it have some negligible deterrent effect. So this isn't going to, even when this gets through all the various stages in Parliament, if it does, and that's questionable, as Olivia has just said, then it's still not going to deliver what the government says it's expecting it to deliver. So in the meantime, the eyes of politicians, well, the government, civil service, politicians, the media, the public, has been taken off all of the various other issues relating to immigration, the overall numbers, the pressures on public services, and also the other elements of borders, which all the cocaine, all the heroin, 97% of the illegal firearms entering this country do so across our borders. And, you know, it's not just the people that we should be looking at here in terms of what is the government doing to secure this country, manage its borders correctly, and manage its immigration correctly. So, you know, there's a whole raft of things that I'm concerned about here. I think this is Rishi Sunak trying to kick this down the road to the point where he might be able to get an aeroplane off the ground just around about the time that he enters a general election campaign, and then he will hail this as a great success. It won't be. It'll just be a little bit of window dressing.
Dr. Kandaya, is window dressing what we need when we're trying to talk about the issue of migration, not just the illegal channel crossings?
I want to agree with almost everything Henry said. This scheme is unethical, unworkable and unaffordable. I think it's unethical because I think the UK, as one of the largest economies in the world, has a responsibility to care for some refugees and asylum seekers. I'm in Jerusalem right now. We're looking at the humanitarian disaster that's going on in Gaza. And some of it is caused by us, by our arms and by our unwillingness to stand for a ceasefire. So I think it's unethical. I think it's unworkable. As Henry just said, it's not actually going to impact large numbers of asylum seekers. We're talking about 300 asylum seekers that we've got to deal with Rwanda to look after. And there's a paradox at the heart of the whole process. This legislation is telling it's making legal fiction. It's deciding that Rwanda is a safe country. And many people want to tell us how great a country Rwanda is. Well, if it is such a safe and great country, it's hardly a deterrent for people who are fleeing war and terror, who are desperate to find somewhere safe to live. And if it isn't a safe country, then it's unethical for us to send them there, and we'll be breaking human rights law. And finally, it's unaffordable. We've already spent £390 million sending no one to Rwanda. And according to the statistics I've been looking at, it's around £165,000 extra for each refugee or asylum seeker that we send. So it's unaffordable, unethical, and unworkable. We need to be dealing, I agree fully with Henry here, with the security issues at the heart. We need to be smashing these criminal gangs. We need to be providing safe and legal routes for people who have a reason to come here, like people from Afghanistan.
But that doesn't solve your problem, Dr. Kandaya. You had a man who died on the Bibby Stockholm yesterday. Is that unethical?
It's totally unethical. We should not be treating people as second-class citizens because of the mode of arrival in the United Kingdom.
And what do you think about that, Mr. Bolton?
Well, first of all, we don't know the circumstances around what happened on the Bibby Stockholm, not precisely. And if it was indeed a suicide, then we don't know what the motives for that were yet. So I would park judgment on that particular incident.
But however, there is a legitimate question: is there not on this particular
article?
Go on.
On the Article 31 of the United Nations Refugee Convention, if somebody has entered a country illegally, even if it's for the purpose of claiming asylum, then you can detain them. Now, these people on the Bibby Stockholm aren't being detained, but where do you put them? Are we just suggesting that we let them sort of loose in the country without accommodation, without any tracking, without... You know, we'll lose track of them. The Home Office has already lost track of thousands of asylum seekers. So, no, what we've got a problem with here is the government does not, first of all, have a proper strategy for dealing with borders or immigration, unlike many other countries, including, by the way, Albania. They don't have the strategy, they don't have the national objectives, they don't have the national coordination. None of the various issues or elements of what the government is doing is coherent. There is nothing connecting them. There's no unity of effort. And I find it amateurish. I find it incredibly incompetent. And I don't know who's responsible, whether this is there is a lack of leadership from the senior levels of government, absolutely. But there is also a lack of competency in the civil service to be able to do anything that even the government, whether it's right or wrong, the government sense direction, and the civil servants aren't doing it correctly anyway.
Dr. Kandai, on the issue of this death on the Bibby Stockholm, I accept Henry Bolton's point that we don't know the specifics, although the charities involved say this particular person had been having mental health problems and had been asking for help and had allegedly not been receiving it. But there is a question, and do you think that yesterday the timing of this, just as the whole country is debating the future of this Rwanda policy and the rights and wrongs of the numbers of asylum seekers in this country, is there a legitimate question about how we should be treating people who enter this country? Because you make the point there is no legal way for people to come in as asylum seekers or safe way. You know, these people are four people to a room. They don't have access to the sort of amenities that we have, and as you describe, second-class citizens.
I think the simplest way to deal with this issue around accommodation is to allow asylum seekers to work. People want to pay their way. The reason they have to stay in hotels and in second-grade accommodation, incredibly expensive second-grade accommodation, like the Bibby Stockholm, £500 million for this deal, which is, you know, unfit for human habitation with the numbers of people in this place, is to let people work, let them pay their own way. They want to make a contribution to society. They're not even allowed to volunteer for charity work. We've given them no options except to stay in this horrible accommodation, and they would rather be working and contributing while they wait for their asylum claim to be heard. We should speed that up. Instead of spending £390 million on a failing Rwanda deal, we should invest more money in clearing the backlog so that the asylum claims can be heard. Those that have a legitimate claim get looked after and cared for, and those that don't, we need to be returning to other countries like we've managed to do with Albania. Albania is actually a success story. We found a way, working with legitimate diplomatic routes with the Albanian government, to return people that don't have the right claim to be here.
OK, gentlemen, we've got to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. Well, over to you now. What do you think? You hear Dr. Kandai talk about second-grade accommodation. From what I've seen, I haven't been on board the Bibby Stockholm, but it looks like barrack accommodation. It looks like what you would expect soldiers to live in. But so it wouldn't be good enough. It would be good enough for soldiers, but not good enough for illegal migrants. It is quite, I mean, the doctor's point there, should people who come here for asylum, should they be placed in the best possible accommodation and have room service and everything else that goes with it, or do they sleep in barrack accommodation? I think if I was a migrant, I think I'd just be thankful that I was in a safe country. But your views, that's what it's all about. GBViews at gbnews.com.
Let's get the views of Annie Shuttleworth and what's in store for the weather. There's lots of chatter about a big freeze on the way.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's got us off to a more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
Thank you, Annie. Can we brighten things up for you in any way, like the Great British Giveaway?
Yes, £10,000 in cash up for grabs, along with brand new tech. Fancy a new phone, bang up-to-date iPhone, plus shopping vouchers.
Well, you could be the winner of our very first Great British Giveaway. We'll announce it in January, and here are the details of how you could make those prizes yours.
This week, we're launching the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to grab some amazing prizes and start your new year the right way. You could win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Imagine having all of that extra cash in your bank account. We'll also bring you bang up to date with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we'll give you £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Good luck to you. Wouldn't that be nice in January? Still to come, Harry and Meghan, are they the biggest losers of 2023?
They could do with entering that competition.
They could do with 10 grand. The Hollywood Reporter thinks they are. We'll be hearing what the royal correspondent Ingrid Stewart thinks after this.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
More bad news for Harry and Meghan. Their charity Archewell, which is named, of course, after their 4-year-old Archie, has this year seen donations drop by nearly £9 million. That's $11 million.
But that's not the only bad news. Showbiz magazine, The Hollywood Reporter, has dubbed the couple amongst the biggest losers of 2023. Despite that, yesterday they released a glitzy video showcasing the work of the Archewell Foundation.
Well, they might want to be taken to their happy place because it is all doom and gloom for them this morning. Let's speak to the editor of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward, who joins us this morning. Always lovely to see you. Oh, they won't be happy with all of this, will they?
Well, I think they'll especially be unhappy with the remarks in the Hollywood Reporter because it's like a Bible in the areas that they work in. And I think that they feel that they've basically been ridiculed. Of course, they're still making money and it's still successful, but it's just such a huge drop on last year. And the problem is they've been ridiculed and they have become something of a joke in their own Harry's adopted country. And as we all know, or we've learnt that, Hollywood is very fickle and that's the market they need in order to sell themselves and sell their goodwill and sell their good works. And on top of it, they've produced this.
Ingrid, what are they selling?
Video, as you can see.
What are they selling? You see, the point is, if we go to the Invictus Games, we know that the war wounded, that Harry and I think Meghan represent on that front, and they can do that in the UK and they can do that in the USA. But I think once you get to this Archewell business, I couldn't tell you what it stands for. Could you tell what it stands for? Just a lot of do-gooding. I don't know. But should they not solidify and concentrate on one or two things in particular?
I absolutely agree. I think no one can really tell you what Archewell exactly is trying to do. They want to spread the word, but what word? It's not very simple. And they want to do good, as you say, but what kind of good do they really want to do? It's not clear at all what they are trying to do, and it seems to me that they don't really know what they're trying to do.
That they have been very, very quiet for a number of weeks. We haven't heard or really seen them. They've dropped this video, which we can see some commentators, I think probably a bit cynically, saying it was sort of to try and keep up with the Walesers who did that similar video of sort of do-gooding yesterday. But what they haven't done, and what a lot of people were expecting and hoping for them to do, is come out and condemn Omid Scobie and his book and the allegations made within it, which makes people suspect that, in fact, they were, once again, the source for Omid Scobie's book. So it's interesting, they've come out, broken their silence with this video. It said nothing about Endgame.
Their PR is very, very strange to us. It seems that it concentrates on not listening to what's happening, but just going ahead with what they're doing. And it's very strange that they haven't distanced themselves from Scobie's very unpleasant book. And I feel that I don't know why they haven't. It makes you feel that they must in some way be involved with it, although he denies that. But I think your main point is that nobody really knows what they're trying to do. And the Princess of Wales released a video with her and the children, and it was very simple. It was very obvious what they were doing, and it was just very sort of homely. This is very slick, and it still doesn't tell us what they're trying to do, apart from hug a few veterans. I know that is Harry's big thing, is military veterans, but all Meghan ever seems to do is just hug a lot of people. And I think that's just doesn't tell us what she's really wanting to message to get across.
Well, big hug to you, Ingrid. Always good to hear from you. Compliments of the season to you. Thank you very much indeed. We get into the sport now, and we talk about this referee in Turkey who was punched by a club president. Terrible. His eye socket was broken. And Paul has got Keith Hackett, top referee, former chief of referees in this country.
Former chief of referees, Keith Hackett. Morning, Keith. And he's on with us. It's good to see you, Keith. I think we've got you. The thing is that there he is, Keith. I know there's not going to be any question. I'm not even going to say to you, what do you think of it? Because I'm sure I know, and everybody knows what you think about it. But are you surprised this has happened, or is it one of those things you think it was always waiting to happen? Something like this was going to give way in the end.
I think there's always a risk, Paul. The reality is that the Premier League, they plan very carefully the security and egress of the match officials off the pitch. Yes, we do get managers occasionally coming up and having a bit of a spout, but generally, if there's anything untoward happening, the stewards will come in quickly and the police, where appropriate, will also come on. So I think that in the English game, we recognise that this could happen, and in fairness to the Premier League and the FA, they've taken action to avoid it, but there's always that risk. You know, there's always the risk. We had a period when objects were thrown at match officials, running the risk of hitting the referee and hitting the players. You know, what took place in Turkey, we know is unacceptable. Turkey FA has got to look very carefully at the security aspect for match officials. This guy's 37. He's regarded as one of the best referees in Turkey. He's now faced this problem, finishing up in hospital. The message to refereeing is awful.
It is awful. It's absolutely awful. Keith, I think you point out there may be a chance this could happen in the upper echelons of the game here, but surely representation like this, people copying this, it's more likely to happen in lower leagues and pub leagues and amateur leagues.
You're absolutely spot on, and it has already happened. We have had referees assaulted at grassroots level, finishing up in hospital, and thankfully the police taking a severe view of it and judges putting those assailants into prison. So this is not new. It has happened at grassroots level. In fairness to the FA, they've experimented, and it seems to have worked with body cameras, and the results of that seem to be very positive. You know, the guys who are out and the girls who are out in the middle on the local parks have no protection. And this is why this sort of assailant by this guy is just unacceptable and sends the wrong message to people involved in the game. If you want to assault a referee in local football, you'd run the risk of being in prison. That's the message that needs to go out very clearly to everybody involved in football in this part of the world.
It's shocking. We talk about this all the time, don't we, Eamonn, about how referees are treated. I know people always going on about VAR, this is bad, but we're seeing more players that are surrounding referees. We're seeing referees that are just being hounded the whole time. Do you think that what's happened in Turkey, strangely, may help what's going on in the Premier League, and maybe that it will actually be a warning call to players just to think, look, this is really bad. This is how bad referees are being treated. Maybe now they should pull back a little bit, and maybe we'll see a little less of what we've been seeing in the Premier League.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question that everybody will have seen and heard and the reaction of the Turkey FA and want to prevent it. I've no doubt that the FA will be, and the Premier League will be, reviewing their operations. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, one of the problems we find with VAR, and that's a long discussion, I know, is that because the fans are not kept informed inside the stadium, we've got players surrounding the referee, trying to ask questions, and some going slightly over the top. The FA have got to take a stronger line on it.
Keith, we look at a man of your distinguished experience through the years, refereeing at the top level. I'm sure things happened to you. I'm sure you were jostled and pushed and whatever it is. What was the worst it ever got for you in terms of physical violence?
Well, I think that I did West Ham against Nottingham Forest in an FA Cup game, and I had to send off Tony Gale because the FA unwisely had changed the interpretation of the law 3 days before. No one knew. And believe me, I had to take very great care when I came out of the ground, and I took evasive action. I went a long way around to get to my car. But fortunately, Eamonn, being fairly tall at the time, 6 foot odd, people were reluctant to actually approach me in that manner. And fortunately, I avoided it. But the reality is that this sort of level of abuse at grassroots level comes through, and we've got to get into a position where our referees become slightly better in their decision-making, and the authorities sort out the handball law and this VAR, because it's making a mess of the game and it's bringing referees into focus for the wrong reasons.
Yes, interesting. You know, Paul, I often wonder, talking to Keith there and seeing him in action and whatever, who would be a referee? And I say this, Keith, because after looking at those scenes in Turkey and whatever as well, I think it must be hard enough to entice somebody to say, will you do this job of the man in the middle or the woman in the middle? And how difficult is it, do you think, Keith, to attract referees?
And why would you want to be a referee? For what reason would you want to be a referee now?
Well, I think that often, like myself, we're not good enough to be able to play at the highest level, so the refereeing gives you that route. I mean, refereeing has taken me to over 100 countries around the world, officiating and lecturing on refereeing matters. So that opportunity exists. A salary now at the very highest level, over 100,000 these guys earn. So from a business point of view, from a career point of view, that is an opportunity. You know, I can remember, walking out at Wembley and just before I entered the field being told by the FA, what do you want? A medal or the £35 match fee?
You went with the cash. You've got to have gone with the cash, Keith.
Gosh.
Listen, I worked the replay and I got both. But,
well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
When we look at refereeing and we look at students at universities, cash-strapped to some degree, taking up the course of refereeing, they can earn £100+ a weekend running around a football field blowing the whistle. The lawmakers have some responsibility here for making law changes that might be relatively easy to apply at the elite level with assistant referees. We've got to recognise there's over 20,000 referees that don't have linesmen or assistant referees. They're making the decisions. And I'm telling you, the laws on offside and handball are so complex now that we've made it difficult for match officials. They've got to sort out the laws and make them simpler so we all understand them.
Well, I got to blow the whistle on you two there. Thank you. That was really, really interesting. Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Paul.
Pleasure.
And Isabel's right, though, about rugby. It happens in rugby, the rules, very, very complicated, but they behave. So why can't it happen in football? There's no reason why it can't happen.
There you go.
I'm with Webster on this.
Yes, quite right. Listen, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We've got headliners next. We're going through all of the stories that are making those with Norman Baker and Renee Hunderkamp after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels
We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We're going through the headlines of the day with the GP and medical writer Dr René Hunderkamp and the former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker. Norman, let's talk about one of these water companies. They've got huge funds to repay and they're now saying can't afford it.
This is Thames Water, who are facing fines over sewage dumping, which we know about from Ofwat. Of course, there's been a lot of that recently, hasn't there? We also know Thames Water has been facing scrutiny because they've been paying out a dividend of 37.5 million in October, and now they say they can't pay their bills and want to put the prices up for consumers.
Why don't they just reduce their dividends?
Why don't we just take the water companies back into public control?
Well, apparently, Norman, they have to be given a 25-year notice period if they lose their franchise.
Look, I mean, the government can make any law it wants to, as we're seeing with Rwanda. They can nationalise these water companies tomorrow if they want to.
Do we really think in today's world that the state can do a better job with these?
Yes,
yes, we
do a better job.
We can't do a worse job with the water companies. They're terrible. And if you look, the water is still, I think, if I correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's still in public hands in Scotland and Northern Ireland. They don't have the same problems there.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're insolvent. You know, the taxpayer is being asked constantly to bail them out. This is outrageous. This is water, the essential thing that we all need to live. I'm sorry to agree again, Norman, but I do agree. I don't often call for nationalisation, but I think on this occasion, it's water, it should be.
What do you make of Michelle Mone, the Conservative? Is she still a peer?
She's still a peer.
Still a peer, yeah.
But she's taken a leave of absence.
She's going to disappear, in fact, for a while.
So she's paid for a sort of infomercial or an advert, basically,
yes.
With Mark Williams-Thomas to interview her over the PPE scandal. From what you've seen, what do you think?
So I think that what this should do is lift the lid on all of the companies who just profited as we suffered during COVID, who got their friends in government to give them dodgy deals. Michelle Mone harassed the government and companies to which she initially denied having any workings with, but now it discovers that she does actually have connections with, got a £200 million PPE contract. Most of it was unusable, and the government are now saying they will sue that company. Some of it was allegedly siphoned off to trust funds that her children are beneficiaries of. This is a disgrace, but she's right. If they only go after her, then she is a scapegoat for everything else that went on. There are plenty of companies in COVID that benefited massively as the rest of the country suffered, and we should be pursuing them vigorously through the courts.
Yeah, well, exactly. They are allegations at the moment. She hasn't been convicted of anything in the courts yet. I mean, Sarah Vine was saying to me the other week that she felt that Michelle Mone was the victim of misogyny, that because she'd made her money in underwear, she'd become a bit of a scapegoat on the PPE scandal. Do you think there's a bit of that going on?
I don't know, to be honest with you, but what I do know is that a whole lot of fast-track contracts were given without proper scrutiny by the government to people who are funding the Tory party, which is outrageous. And as has been said by Rainey, a lot of the equipment didn't even work properly. A huge amount of public money was wasted on this, and it should be recovered, and virtually none of it has been recovered.
Right, so what about the expenses of a Conservative MP called Mike Freer? Have they been recovered? He charged £6, Norman, for what?
For a sticky situation, for a Pritt stick.
And is a Pritt stick not £6? How much is a Pritt stick?
It's quite expensive Pritt stick, actually, isn't it? £6. I thought it was less than that.
Probably get it in the pound shop.
But in a pound shop, indeed. So, but I mean, we've got the situation where, well, we're worrying about £6 compared to how much is being wasted by Thames Water and how much has been wasted on PPE equipment doesn't work. But nevertheless, Mike Freer has charged £6 for his Pritt stick to the public purse, and this is actually Rennie's MP, I gather.
It is indeed.
Are you outraged?
He knows me very well, as I write to him constantly.
Do you?
Yes, I do, because I feel that that's what we should be doing. We should be holding our MPs.
Sorry, I'm not sure why everybody's getting annoyed about this. He's allowed to claim expenses. Pritt stick is an office expense. My only question is, does a Pritt stick cost £6 or not? Assuming it does, what's the problem?
£3.65 on Amazon.
What?
Oh,
£3.65 for one on Amazon.
Isabel has Amazon on tap.
£3.75 in Waitrose.
And that's probably the top end, isn't it, Waitrose?
But it's certainly not £6, so he's almost doubling it.
Look, I think it's really interesting that we're always looking, as you say, Eamonn, for just something to, chastise our MPs over. And I don't have any objection to MPs staffing their office or using the right equipment. But I think it's when we get down to the nitty-gritty of itemising things that look like they're too expensive compared to what you can buy them for if you popped out to the supermarket.
Always worth pointing out that Norman Baker was one of the very few MPs that came out absolutely squeaky clean from that expenses scandal back in the day. Not many people could say that.
Well, that's true. In fact, I started off a freedom of information request about MPs' expenses, largely because I was concerned about travel and people claiming excess travel. Four MPs from Glasgow coming down in the car and claiming for lots of expenses. And, of course, I didn't realise it was all going to be duck houses and moats and everything else and ivy being cleaned off buildings. It was horrendous. But actually it needed to be cleaned out, and the system is now a lot better. We now know that he's claiming £6 for his Pritt stick. I think he's rather unwise to do so.
Well, there we go. A sticky situation, as you say.
Cats are being painted as public enemy number one. They say they prey on 2,000 species worldwide.
This is called nature, Eamonn, isn't it? This is what
Yeah, again, I'm not getting annoyed about this either.
No, but people are. And the RSPCA is actually trying to recommend that we, here in the UK, limit our cats' access to the outside. And in Australia, they actually want to make it law that you can't let a cat outside. That in itself is cruel. My cat climbs the wall before he can be allowed to go outside. And it's what cats do.
It's what cats do. Interesting. Now, Isabel is a cat owner, and your little cat's going through a procedure this morning.
Little Hector just got admitted to the vets and is about to be neutered so he can go outside.
Exactly.
And he is desperate. We've almost cut off his paws and his nose so many times, slamming the door shut so he doesn't run off.
It's not his paws they're cutting off.
Well, not today.
No.
But I'm conflicted on this, I have to say. I totally want my cat to go out. I think it's cruel to keep them in. But I do believe that the bird population is being damaged and hurt by cats.
A bird has to be smart enough to deal with a cat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nature's,
Cats are
Rennie
wild and natural and often, native, and our domestic cats are bred. And I don't know, I'm conflicted on it. I like both cats and I like birds. I love my cat to bits, and I will be letting him out, but I won't take pleasure in seeing him killing the birdies.
Very rare for my cat to catch a bird, and I must admit, I'm so thankful for that because they make such a mess in the house. But he does catch mice and rats, which I'm more than happy.
Absolutely. Get the rodents.
Well, to quote a lovely piece of poetry. I thought I saw a putty cat creeping up on me. I did. I saw a putty cat, as plain could be. So that was Sylvester, wasn't it?
It was. But you didn't get the kind of... I thought I saw a putty tat.
Yes.
Putty tat.
Putty cat. So I mean, such is the whole balance of
suffering succotags.
Nature with that. So suffering succotags, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not annoyed about that story. No.
We were trying to make you annoyed.
Can we talk about this wonderful train? I really want to be convinced that this is really romantic and amazing and will transport me across Europe. This new sleeper train that's been announced between, where was it? Somewhere in Germany and Austria.
It's the Nightjet Sleeper.
Have we got some film?
Hopefully.
Sort of film of it? Oh, do we not have any film?
We do. It's coming.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks fairly standard.
Well, it'll be nice inside, as you see.
Oh. No, that's fine. That's fine. That looks fun. I'd go on that. What do you think, Norman? Thumbs up?
I think sleeper trains are rather nice anyway.
It's not quite the Orient Express.
It's not the Orient Express. But, I mean, actually, in Europe, in mainland Europe, they're coming back, night trains are coming back big time. And it's really quite good. There's a revival of night trains across Europe. I'd like to see it over here. What a pity we can't get a train that goes from, say, Edinburgh to Brussels overnight or Edinburgh to Berlin.
I've tried to book the train from London to Scotland, and it's now not only booked for months in advance, it's astronomically expensive.
Yeah,
so is this one expensive?
I don't know if it's expensive or not, but a lot of the trains in Europe, the sleeper trains, are not expensive. And it's actually cheaper than buying a hotel for the night.
I've had to film on board various overnight trains. Fine, a bit of a squeeze. But what I recognise, they put you in a room for two, you get a double bed and things like that, would be absolutely impossible to take my wife on one of these because she would have at least 3 suitcases. At least, and she would not, she's claustrophobic anyway. So she would not, I could not, I look at the cupboards and the wardrobes and things and I think, there is no way this could accommodate her ever.
So what you have is reason to travel alone?
No, I'd travel on my own, yeah. I'd travel on my own. That's the way to do it, yeah. Or somebody who's very low maintenance.
There's also the Sleeper to Penzance, let's remember, down to the West Country. Which
Yes,
is
but they always go quite late at night and arrive really early.
Well, no,
it's not quite far enough.
If you go to Penzance, you're all right. If you get off in Plymouth or somewhere, then you get off in the middle of the night.
It doesn't quite work, is all I would say.
The Colosseum, a wonderful thing to view when in Rome, and they've discovered a house, a home, near the Colosseum.
This is absolutely amazing. They have whole rooms that they've discovered that are decorated in mosaics of shells and gems and all sorts of beautiful things.
Wow.
It was obviously owned by, they think, a senator who was showing off his wealth. So it just goes to show that even 2,000 years ago, people that had lots of money decorated their homes and showed off how wealthy they were. Apparently, he had whole rooms with water games to impress his guests. It doesn't say what they were. But look at this. I mean, it's stunning. And what it also says is, what else is hidden underground that we have yet to discover?
Including at Stonehenge, perhaps?
Yes.
Yes.
Dig under Stonehenge, goodness knows what you'll find there. Yeah. So, sorry, you said they had rooms for water games.
Water games, elaborate.
What do you mean, like water pistols?
Elaborate water games.
The Romans, they loved a spa, didn't they?
Spa, yeah.
They loved a hot
There would have been
spring.
fountains and springs and baths.
They loved naked baths.
They did.
Close to the Colosseum, though, it's very busy and very built up. I wonder how they discovered it.
Yeah.
How it wasn't discovered before.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
And they do say that they're going to open it up to the public as soon as they can.
Quite right.
Which is fabulous. Every time I go to Rome, I think I'm walking around in a museum.
It is amazing. It's
Yeah.
just a shame all the other tourists are there as well.
Do you think they would close it for us if we made a
That would
special
be lovely.
request?
I like it in the Roman holiday. If I could be like that, that would be perfect.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, but Rome is another one of those cities that suffers terribly from graffiti.
Yeah.
Yes, Vienna suffers terribly from graffiti. Does London? Not really. Not really.
There's a lot more along the railway these days coming in on the trains. You see it all. And actually, the graffiti in the old days used to be, humorous sometimes. Now it's just kind of
Tags.
signatures.
Is it graffiti or is it street art?
Graffiti.
Yeah.
Well, it's all rubbish, isn't it? All of it. That's what you need to have a water game, a hose to wipe all that stuff off.
I thought the best bit of graffiti I saw was when I was working for British Rail many, many years ago, and they introduced cheap day returns at that point, and there was BR poster of someone dressed as Henry VIII going to the booking office saying cheaply return to Hampton Court, and someone written underneath, and a single for the wife.
Ah, very good, very good.
Thank you very much indeed. One-way ticket. Guys, Rennie and Norman, thank you both very much indeed for your views this morning. Let's go to Annie Shuttleworth. Here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's gotten us off to a more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Stay with us. We're going to Downing Street in just a moment. We'll be speaking to our political editor, Christopher Hope, over quite a night for the Prime Minister and all the details ahead of PMQs later today.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's fast approaching 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 13th of December, and this is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Welcome on board. Here's what we've been covering this morning. If you're just tuning in, the Prime Minister has survived the biggest threat to his leadership as the Rwanda bill passed its first hurdle in the Commons. But he's not out of the woods just yet, as Christopher Hope will tell you. Christopher, good morning.
The PM won the battle last night with his plan for Rwanda, but will he win the war? There's more problems in January coming up. We'll hear about that soon.
Some positive news out of COP28 in Dubai. Almost 200 countries managed to agree for the first time to move away from fossil fuels, but not to phase them out. We'll have all the latest in just a moment.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been dubbed amongst the biggest losers of 2023 by The Hollywood Reporter, as they face a funding shortfall in their charity.
And Annie Shuttleworth has your weather.
Good morning. After the unsettled day yesterday, there'll be more dry and fine weather around today, but not for everyone. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
Lots of you have been getting in touch this morning. Gary says all we hear from Labour on the Rwanda plan is that they have a plan which seems to be to speed up processing, and all that will do is encourage more people coming by boat. David says he's fed up with the political system in the UK. The public voted government in, and then the Lords, made up of unelected politicians, has the final say. Let us know what you think.
What are you fed up with? gbviews@gbnews.com. Latest on our top story this morning, the Prime Minister has survived a possible rebellion over his Rwanda bill last night. The legislation comfortably passed with a majority of 44, but there will be further votes in the new year. No Conservatives voted against the bill, but 29 abstained. Later, the Prime Minister faces Sir Keir Starmer for the last Prime Minister's questions of the year.
Well, let's speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who joins us this morning. Is it fair to say, Christopher, it was a bit of an anticlimax last night? Everybody thought that this was going to be an absolute bruiser for the Prime Minister. Although what I would say is the number 29, slightly ominous. That was the number of abstentions, and that is exactly the number it could take at a later date to bring down the bill.
Well, that's right. He won the battle last night, but the war is not settled. There's going to be a committee of the whole House of Commons to review this bill in January, and then it might be amended by either the right or the left to make it softer or harder towards the human rights legislation, the ECHR, which the right is so concerned about. Yeah, the PM was very chipper last night. He went to a reception held by the 1922 committee, made some jokes about warring families over Christmas, and despite what he's been going through in the past few days, he is quite resilient. He showed his mettle last night, and that's to be is a good thing for him. I think the team behind him will be quite pleased that the majority was 44, nowhere near the low 20s, which some of us thought. The right peeled away, as you say there, Isabel. 29 Tory MPs chose to abstain. The rebellants were allowed not to be there last night. That's enough to defeat it if all 29 vote against. The whips now will be trying to pick off those numbers, private meetings, going through all the detail and working out how they can try and harden the legislation, as the Mr. Sunak said he would do, without losing the support of the left. It's going to be a very, very delicate, tight road to walk on, I think, for the PM.
How did he achieve getting those 29 to abstain? We reach committee stage next. Have they been promised something there?
They've been promised, Eamonn, to harden up this legislation. There was a meeting about 24 hours ago behind me with around 15 members of the so-called New Conservatives group. That's one of the, forgive me, one of the 5 families on the right of the party. This is the right of the party divided into 5 different groupings. The ERG, I won't list them all for the breakfast viewers, but it does seem slightly chaotic that you have 5 different groupings on the right of one party. But there we are. I was struck by Camilla Tominey, who said that rather than the broad church, the Tory party is resembling a congregation losing its religion at the moment, which is sort of some sympathy for that. But these groupings have been told there will be ways to harden this legislation, and that's why they abstained rather than voting against last night. The problem for the PM is that's a promise. A problem deferred is not a problem solved. He's got to deal with this problem, lance the boil of what the right feel about the legislation in January. That could be very, very difficult indeed. So a quiet Christmas now for him, but what could be a stormy New Year.
Does it have to be the new year, Christopher? I don't understand why he has to lance the boil now. I mean, there's lots of chatter that this election could be in May, just ahead of any possible pain of a round of local elections, and just in time to allow these tax cuts to come in the new year. So why not defer this a little bit if it's problematic for him?
Well, they've set out. They want to have sessions in the Commons starting I think January the 15th. He has said repeatedly, and Number 10 have been, and James Cleverly, in fact, the Home Secretary, said today that they want the first flights to take off in the spring. That means May in Whitehall terms, and so therefore they have to get the legislation passed. If they can get some degree of legislation through the Lords by April, they can then, if they want to, go to the country in May, if they choose to, saying we've got the plan ready to go. Don't let Labour axe it. Labour's policy, of course, is to remove this legislation from the statute book if it wins power. So there's an opportunity, I think, to go to the country in May with the promise of Rwanda possibly working and deterring people from crossing the English Channel, because they'll be sent straight back to Rwanda for processing.
Well, somebody's working around you there. I mean, it seems to be at 9 o'clock they must open the gates at Downing Street and all hell breaks loose.
It's not the scaffolding, it's...
Who is it? Who's letting their horns go off today?
That's a Rayner's van delivering Eamonn. I'm not sure if it's champagne. I couldn't see what came out of it. It might be champagne.
We're popping the corks today in celebration. Fair enough. It was a tough couple of days for the PM. Although he's got PMQs coming up, so maybe that would be a bit premature. Christopher, as always, lovely to get your analysis. Thank you.
We're now going to get analysis on COP28. We hear today an agreement has been reached there, keeping a close eye on the news. Director of Climate Change Coalition, Donncha McCarthy. Donncha, what are you hearing about what has been agreed?
Good morning, Eamonn, again. Finally, they've got an agreement that we should move away from fossil fuels. This was the key battle line for this COP. But I must say, I mean, this should have been the battle line settled 30 years ago. Setting up a COP process to phase out fossil fuels and takes you 30 years to agree that you will phase out fossil fuels, to my mind, is a tiny step in the right direction. However, the other things that came out of the meeting was that there's an agreement to triple investment in fossil fuels, double investment in energy efficiency, and the other...
Oh, we've lost Donncha there, I think. We just cut to the feed there. Oh, sorry, Donncha, just repeat that point, because we were just showing pictures of COP28 and it stole your mic.
Sure, sorry about that. Yeah, the other small step that was taken, they've agreed a damage fund to compensate third world countries that are being damaged already by climate change. The problem with that is the fund is tiny. It's around 500 million, 0.5 of a billion pounds, to compensate for around $1 trillion worth of damage around the world. So a tiny step in the right direction, Eamonn and Isabel.
And I just wonder, I mean, we've talked to you on this programme before with Jim Dale about whether or not COP28 is a cop-out these days, whether it actually achieves anything. You've been deeply sceptical about whether or not it is worth its salt. Does this change your view anymore? This has gone further than a lot of people were fearing over the last few days.
Well, you know, the problem is the lack of success over the last 30 years. Every COP, the emissions have gone up. So when you actually have an agreement that we must at some stage phase out fossil fuels, I have to say I'm taking this with a large pinch of salt. However, we must actually, what we now need to do is next year is put substance on that agreement. And what's needed is the very first step needed is no investment in new fossil fuels. That's where there's a real contradiction between the European Union, the UK and the US, which is pushing for us to agree at COP that we need to phase out fossil fuels, whilst at the same time, they are all investing in massive billions in new fossil fuels. As the Prime Minister says, he wants to max out UK fossil fuels. How can we max out fossil fuels and phase them out at the same time? That's the billion-dollar question that comes out of this COP.
OK, we'll leave that question hanging in the air. Donegal, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it there. Right, Britain's newsroom from 9:30. Andrew and Beverly, let's cross to them to see what's coming their way. Guys,
good morning.
Morning.
A bit more dissection of the Rwanda vote last night, what it means. We've got Richard Tice coming in to the studio to talk about that. It's interesting, isn't it? The papers are depicting it as either a victory or sort of a lucky survival.
Yeah, it's a lull before the storm, because we'll be looking at how 29 abstained. It needed 29 votes to defeat the bill, so he's still got huge problems. And when it comes back to the Commons in January and February, it'll be ripped apart. And I still can't see a flight taking off to Rwanda anytime soon. Also talking about dogs. Apparently, people are spending more on their dogs this year than they are on their husbands and wives.
In what way?
Because people just think people have got enough. And
spending on them, how are they spending?
Christmas presents
people are
for
buying
dogs.
Christmas presents. Presumably they get wrapped up and unwrapped. Why don't you just give them an old bone?
Well, we have
talking of old bones.
Presents on Christmas morning. The dog is there, and she knows which ones are hers.
Really?
And she pulls them out and unwraps them with her paws. And it's
come on, Eamonn Holmes. What are you talking about?
I used to think, I've thought, what sort of nutcase does this sort of thing? But we've had her for 14 years, and we've done it for 14 years. And
interesting.
The dog gets great joy from it, as does my wife and son get great joy from it. As do I. And so if you ask me who was the nicest person to me in the past year, it's my dog.
Well, that's, you see, why so many people are buying their dogs nice presents
Well,
for
why just
Christmas.
dogs? What about the cats out there? Come on, Andrew, you're a cat fan.
The cats get just a few extra goodies, but they're not wrapped up. Exactly.
What else are we going to be talking about this morning?
Well, Anne Widdecombe's coming on to talk about Strictly, because there's this big row over the fact one of the finalists is almost a professional dancer. He's been in West End musicals for a long time. Widdecombe, by her own admission, would say she was probably one of the worst to ever dance under the...
What's she saying about the professional dancer?
Wait to see, I don't think she's going to be a fan. I can't believe it, because the whole point about Strictly is you're supposed to watch people grow and get better.
Well, you know, the production team behind it, they know who to pick. They'll do whatever they want. They pick whoever they want. There doesn't seem to be any criteria to it at all. And I totally agree with you. If you've gone to dance school, theatre school in any way, then you have a huge advantage.
Massive.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they go for low-hanging fruit, so I'm saying I'm available. I'd love to do Strictly. Anyone keen? Sign us up. Will you up for that bit?
Oh, I'd love to do Strictly, yeah. I mean, they'd never have us on.
But they have done it. You have done it. There's that woman that goes around impersonating you.
Oh, Ellie Jane Taylor.
Yeah.
Well, we do look quite similar. She's a lot younger than me.
She tries to be you, I'm telling you.
Well, you know what? I think the thing is as well, what people don't kind of realise about maybe the selection process Strictly, it's people who the BBC have got projects for in the future as well, largely.
Yes. And of course they do a deal with ITV as well.
Yes,
because
there's
then
a
they
lot.
get programmes like their breakfast show and whatever, and they put people on because it gives them cross-fertilisation.
Exactly. So no, I don't think you and I would be on the A-list, Isabel.
Eamonn, have you declined invitations to go on it?
Should I what?
Have you declined invitations to go on it?
Oh no, it wouldn't be for me. I mean, Andrew, even though I'm infirmed, but even if I wasn't, it's not my thing. No, I wouldn't be. I would be be the joke one, you know, like the...
Like the Anne Widdecombe.
John
like Anne Widdecombe. I would be the male version of Anne Widdecombe. That's how I would be. So if you're not going to win it, what's the point of entering? That's my view.
Yeah. And we have got the best Christmas meme taking the mickey out of the Conservative Party.
Oh, yeah, it's hilarious.
To show you, which is absolutely hilarious. I don't know how they've done it. They've edited together the most amazing footage of what appears to be Sunak, Jeremy Hunt, James Cleverly, and who's the other one? Maybe Matt Hancock.
Deep fake or something.
It's a deep fake, but it's brilliantly done. It's a spoof.
Well, I was worried they were going to have to do a deep fake of you being here this morning, Andrew, because I know you were out and about with Joan Collins looking very glamorous last night. I spotted that this morning on her Instagram. I was like, oh, there's Andrew.
Yeah.
So well done. You made it in the flesh. We didn't need to see
indeed.
that.
She looked fabulous, didn't she?
She did, yeah. Was her birthday or was it Christmas party?
Christmas party, yeah.
There we go.
Not half as fabulous as Beverly Turner in her GB News uniform.
Do you like this?
If GB News did an airline...
Yeah, if we did an airline, you'd be it.
Chicken or beef, entrances at the front. I think, but we're sort of slightly matchy, aren't we, today?
Wee bit of red in there.
First class and I'll be in economy.
I've had 2 days off because my son returned home from being away for 6 months.
Was that nice?
Yes, it was lovely. I've been on a bit of an emotional roller coaster and now I'm terrified as to what he's going to do next. So
he came home from where?
He'd been on an education programme in Zimbabwe for 6 months. It's quite nice to get rid of one teenager for a little while.
And did you deport him to Zimbabwe?
It was a bit like that, Eamonn, I can't lie. It's very expensive deportation. Anyway, so I'm back now and determined to have a lovely show.
The prodigal son has returned. Fabulous.
Very good.
Thank you. Looking forward to the show, guys.
This next item should be really for Beverly to do in her GB News uniform, but this is the Great British Giveaway.
Yeah, and it's a bit more than chicken or beef. This is a brand new iPhone, shopping vouchers and £10,000 in cash.
And here are all the details you will need if you want to have a go.
It's the Great British Giveaway, your chance to win 3 amazing prizes that will get your new year off to a great start. First, there's a terrific £10,000 in cash to be won. Imagine what you can do with that. We'll also give you a tech update with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, plus £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store. The retail therapy could be on us. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Still to come, we're going to be looking back at our earlier debate about how to address the UK's migration crisis. See you in a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, as the Prime Minister's Rwanda bill lives to see another day, what's next for asylum seekers and migration who do make it to this country?
Well, earlier on the programme, Director of the Sanctuary Foundation, Dr Krish Kandaya, and former Immigration Security Advisor Henry Bolton had this to say.
This is one of the things that I find quite mind-boggling about this whole process, is that the government has become absolutely fixated on Rwanda as, if you like, the silver bullet that's going to stop the boats. It's not. And indeed, I utterly dispute the Prime Minister's assertion that it will be an effective deterrent. The migrants that are crossing the Channel are already in a pipeline. It's very difficult for them to turn back. They are being encouraged by the people smugglers to move, who are countering any government narrative. And indeed, they don't even receive the government narrative. They don't read the British newspapers or watch British television. And only if there are literally, I think, thousands of asylum seekers who eventually get sent to Rwanda, might it have some negligible deterrent effect. So this isn't going to, even when this gets through all the various stages in Parliament, if it does, and that's questionable, as Olivia's just said, then it's still not going to deliver what the government says it's expecting it to deliver. So in the meantime, the eyes of politicians, well, the government, civil service, politicians, the media, the public, has been taken off all of the various other issues relating to immigration, the overall numbers, the pressures on public services, and also the other elements of borders, which all the cocaine, all the heroin, 97% of the illegal firearms entering this country do so across our borders. And, it's not just the people that we should be looking at here in terms of what is the government doing to secure this country, manage its borders correctly and manage its immigration correctly. So, there's a whole raft of things that I'm concerned about here. I think this is Rishi Sunak trying to kick this down the road to the point where he might be able to get an aeroplane off the ground just around about the time that he enters a general election campaign, and then he will hail this as a great success. It won't be. It'll just be a little bit of window dressing.
Dr Kandaya, is window dressing what we need when we're trying to talk about the issue of migration, not just the illegal channel crossings?
I want to agree with almost everything Henry said. This scheme is unethical, unworkable and unaffordable. I think it's unethical because I think the UK, as one of the largest economies in the world, has a responsibility to care for some refugees and asylum seekers. I'm in Jerusalem right now. We're looking at the humanitarian disaster that's going on in Gaza. And some of it is caused by us, by our arms and by our unwillingness to stand for a ceasefire. So I think it's unethical. I think it's unworkable. As Henry just said, it's not actually going to impact large numbers of asylum seekers.
That's one of the great talking points on the programme today. The other has been about domestic cats and should they be tagged and should they be allowed out at night?
Yeah, the Australians are contemplating banning letting them out. Well, Steve says if you say you love nature and own a cat, you're a hypocrite. Mike says domestic cats are responsible for killing up to 21,000 birds. Or is it, I can't count how many.
21 million.
21 million birds in the UK.
No, maybe you're right.
I don't know.
It's a lot, anyway.
And Alan says, anyway,
and also, cats doing their business in everybody else's garden. Big problem. See you in the morning.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll stay rather dull and damp across eastern areas through much of the day, but drier and brighter weather will arrive into northwestern areas. And that's got us off to more of a frostier start across parts of Scotland this morning, and that drier, clearer weather will become more widespread through the rest of the day, spreading into parts of northwest England, Wales, as well as parts of southwest England as well. In the south and east, though, it will stay dull and damp with drizzly rain coming in off an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That'll bring a cooler feel to the day with highs of around 7 degrees for many areas. And after the chillier start across the north and west, temperatures will struggle through the day. That clearer slot of weather then moves further eastwards throughout the night tonight. That will allow a more widespread frost to develop, particularly across central and eastern areas by tomorrow morning. Further north and west, though, we do see the next band of rain push in. That could bring a spell of hill snow across parts of the Pennines, and generally it'll just be a colder feel to the start of the day on Thursday. The rain pushes east through the course of Thursday, so cloud will thicken and some drizzly rain is expected at least by the afternoon, but the rain does tend to fizzle out by the latter part of the day, and it does turn drier and brighter across many central and western areas by Thursday afternoon. Temperatures are starting to climb as we're picking up milder air to highs of 12 degrees on Thursday in the south. We'll also see 12 degrees in the north on Friday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Very good morning. Good morning. So the Rwanda vote, do you think it's a victory for Sunak?
It was definitely a big victory for him last night. 44 majority, but 29 MPs abstaining. Very significant number because 29 MPs voting against would have defeated his bill.
Including Suella Braverman was one of the people who abstained. We're going to be talking about that. What might it mean? Are we going to have any boats taking off? Of course, there was the loss of life on the Bibby Stockholm yesterday as well. We're going to be talking about that and a lot more. Don't go anywhere.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's